Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Community Services Associates, Inc. Board of Directors meeting of Tuesday, November 7th, 2020. We convened earlier and went into executive session. I'd like to confirm, Carolyn, could you confirm that we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. So we will move forward with our agenda. Before we start the agenda, I would like to note that we are going to move the discussion of the Revenue Task Force recommendation regarding the proposed referendum up to item 9C, so that we can talk about it in the context of financial issues. With that, we as a board had email review of our minutes of the meetings of September 29th and the October 26th special meeting. And we also held an annual meeting of the membership on October 27th. We ratified all of those. Is there a motion to confirm and ratify those minutes? Jim Caskey?
So moved.
Second by Barry. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Any objection? Hearing none, those are approved. We'll move on to the chair's remarks. This is our last scheduled meeting of the year, and it is the culmination of a year's worth of work on one particular issue, but that's not the only issue that we worked on as a board. If you had asked me back in January what our goals were, I would have hoped that the financial issues would have been solved well earlier, and we'd have other items that were coming before us. But as we all know, the COVID-19 crisis came up, delayed a lot of work. The committees weren't able to be as active as we wanted. We spent a lot of time studying an enormous number of financial alternatives, and we were able to agree as a board to start the work on the major capital projects even earlier than we could come up with the revenue with the anticipation that would happen. I am very hopeful today that we will in fact move forward with a second alternative, which will become our primary alternative for raising the necessary revenue. And I am optimistic, but with some caution, that revenue projection approach, the referendum will pass. But as we've said all along, we are not going to continue to kick the can down the road. And so we will continue to work on a second alternative, a backup special tax district, just in case. But this meeting is also going to be about the other things that we started, but because of the priority of the financial issues, we're not able to complete. And so during the meeting, I've asked the committee chairs to discuss briefly what they worked on, but more importantly, what they hope to accomplish in the next 12 months, what their committee hopes to accomplish in the next 12 months, so that we can make clear to our members that we are not a board that sits still. We're going to continue moving forward. So those are the things that you'll be hearing about today. I wanted to mention two other issues that are really important. One is we have committee applications on the website, and we are receiving committee applications on the website. We've heard a lot of chatter on some of the Facebook pages about the lack of diversity in the folks who work on the board and presumably on the committees. And that's just a function of who's willing to serve. Every single person who applied for election to be nominated for the board is in fact nominated this year. And we look to our committees as the best source of people who are willing to serve on the board. And so if you are interested, whether you are a resident or a non-resident, part-timer or full-timer, whether you lease your property or you reside in it all the time, we urge you to apply to be on committees. That's a great training tool for people who are on the board. It's also a great way to get involved. The board looks at the committees, and particularly the citizens who sit on the committees, to understand what our resident property owners are interested in. This year, the board fixed the term approach so that if you are nominated, you'll sit for 3 years, at least, potentially up to 6 years. And we will revolve to get new ideas. But the only way we can get new ideas on the committees is to have new people apply. Thanks to Zoom, people who are non-resident who might have felt left out because it was going to be too hard to participate no longer have to feel that way. We have technology now that allows anyone to participate from any time zone, including internationally if they want to. So I urge people to apply. I also want to remind people that we are going to be taking questions at the end of this meeting. If you haven't already submitted questions, which we were collecting prior to the meeting, you can do so at questions@csacpines.com. We will continue to take questions until the meeting adjourns. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes, take a 5-minute recess, and then we will answer them. I'll remind myself to remind you again during the meeting to do that. Lastly, I am obligated each year to appoint a chairman of our nominating committee to nominate officers for next year. That person is supposed to be a past chairman, and I'm pleased to note that Mark Griffith, who served as chairman through last year, has agreed to chair the nominating committee for officers of the CSA board. Once the election results are known, he will contact each of you to find out who you would like to serve in the various positions. And then the committee will put together a slate, and we will elect those committee officers in January. So be prepared to hear from our good friend Mark Griffith over the course of December, late December and early January, and he'll be looking for recommendations for officers for next year. With that, I think those are my remarks. I'm looking forward to discussing the referendum and other things, and I'll turn it over to our president, Sam Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted just to remind the board that this agenda has a lot inside of it. The bulk of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to save for the financial updates, the 2021 budget. I just want the board and the community to know that we are looking ahead to 2021. 2020 has been a very challenging and interesting year. COVID has put a new light on much of what we all do. And we don't see that going away for a while. So we will continue to look forward to what 2021 has to bring, understanding it's going to have a new dynamic with COVID and how we operate as an organization. And so as we work through next year, please continue to be patient with us as we figure out what the new normal is. I think that's really all I've got. I'll talk more when we get to the financial updates.
Okay, Sam, and with that, we'll move on to director updates. Is Amanda first?
Amanda,
you're on.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning. Thank you, Sam, Larry, and the rest of the board. Good morning to viewers. My name is Amanda Sutcliffe-Jones. I am your CSA Director of Communications. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining via the live stream, certainly appreciate you coming in at 10 o'clock. If you're watching this video afterwards, appreciate your engagement as well. The Communications Department's been quite busy since our last board meeting. We continue to work on the format of our weekly email communications. We hope you guys are finding those emails helpful. We are working to add more photos of the work that our team is doing every day throughout the week. So you've seen a lot of pictures of our maintenance team out in the field, really working hard. And we also appreciate the positive feedback that we've received from members regarding the new format. We're going to continue looking for that for us. We also assisted with facilitating the annual meeting. We appreciate everybody who returned their proxies to establish a quorum to be able to hold that meeting. You can view the annual meeting video and all of our videos at cpinesliving.com/videos if you're interested in going back and watching those. We are also in the midst of our Board of Director elections. Board of Director election ballots were mailed out to eligible members on October 30th. If you have not received your CSA Board of Director elections ballot, please contact us. You can reach out to us via email at info@csacpines.com and just give us some information so we can look up your account. We're asking for your first and last name and your Sea Pines property address, and we'll be able to get that replacement ballot out to you. To learn more about the candidates who are running for the elections for CSA, you can visit cpinesliving.com/CSA elections, learn about the candidates who are running, and then also learn about how you can return your ballot. You can return your ballot to Elliott Davis, which is our third-party ballot auditor. They are located in Charleston, South Carolina. And we ask that you please participate in the election by returning your ballot to them postmarked by December 1st. So really important election coming up for us. Larry mentioned this a little earlier in his announcements, but committee applications are due by December the 1st. If you're interested in applying, you can visit cpinesliving.com/committee application to get a copy of that application and get it over to staff so we can get it to the committee chairs on the board as well. As always, just as a reminder, if you want to go back and watch this meeting video or any other videos, like I mentioned, you can visit cpinesliving.com/videos, our website, cpinesliving.com. You can follow us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/cpinesliving. And then you can always reach out to staff at info@csacpines.com. We're here to help, and certainly we'll get you to the right place if we don't know the answer. And our contact us page is a really helpful page for resources for department heads and departments as well. And that's at cpinesliving.com/contact us. So that's my update, Larry. Any questions for me? Okay.
Do any board members have any questions for Amanda? Amanda, thank you for that excellent report. And I want to again stress, as you just did, we have a December 1 deadline for getting applications for committee work. Please, if you're interested, take time to go on the website, fill out the application. It's a relatively easy form, and we need all of the applicants we can to get some new blood and new ideas onto our committees.
Absolutely. And just another reminder that December 1 deadline also stands for our deadline to return Board of Director election ballots. We encourage you to get that in the mail back to us, and we'll get those results back to the community as soon as we get the auditor.
Okay. Next up is Veronica. I knew I'd do that. Victoria Shanahan, our Director of Finance Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Administration Department, we've been really busy. This is a busy time of year for us. We've been building the 2020 forecast, and you can always imagine it's a moving target. We'll be discussing that a little later on in the meeting. We've been working on the 2021 budget. We've been working very closely with Sam as well as the Finance Committee to develop the proposed budget. It's been especially challenging this year as we go through COVID and we address our infrastructure improvements. If the board approves the 2021 residential assessment amounts, we anticipate having the invoices mailed by the 1st of December. We're really excited because we get to bill out of our new system. There's going to be no more double or even triple entries. The invoices will still look the same, and it will be the same process for remitting payment. We anticipate the payment due date will be Monday, January 11th, 2021. I wanted to acknowledge that all of this new invoice and being able to bill out of the system has been made possible by the efforts and dedication of Stephen Vinciguerra, our Manager of Information Technology, and Tracy McNeil, our Finance Administrator. They are the wheels that keep this Finance and Administration Department train moving. And I know I speak for all of CSA staff when I publicly acknowledge the efforts of Stephen for making this new normal way of conducting meetings smooth and seamless. He's always willing to help those of us that are more comfortable with a pen and a printed sheet of paper, right here, than the modern technology. His patience and encouraging smiles have not gone unnoticed. Thank you, Stephen. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions on that report? I think I speak for the entire board by the fact that we are having this meeting and it goes smoothly, and we get the live streams all worked out to just echo the thanks that we have to Stephen. And for those of us who are occasionally at home and it never works, Stephen's immediately available. So bravo, Stephen. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will turn to Russell Fredericks, MEMP. Russell?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Want to address the community this morning with a few updates. Certainly, we're acutely aware of the challenges that face our maintenance team on an ongoing basis, and we're rather grateful this season as we have not been plagued by the many storms that have hit the Gulf. We recently just missed a large storm, and fortunate enough for Sea Pines, we only received a couple inches of rain. Well north of here, they received well over 10 inches or more in just a few hours. As well, I'll speak about later, this is something that's on our mind as a department every single day when we come into work, is the status of our drainage system throughout the community. We've seen many failures over this past year, which I'll elaborate on in just a minute. But again, this has been a challenging season for us all. A few updates. Our staff have been hard at work at repairing potholes and making roadways repairs around the community, as well as making repairs on our 17 miles of leisure trails. We recently completed a couple significant projects, most significant of all, the Greenwood Drive Leisure Trail resurfacing and reconstruction in proximity to Lawton Stables, and it continues down to Sea Pines and Greenwood Drive. This is a very important piece of work, but as we all know, we have many, many miles of leisure trail yet to restore within the community. These leisure trails were most likely repaved last approximately 20 some odd years ago, from what I understand, and we're in quite need of repair. Other projects that we've recently completed is a new railing at the Baynard Cove, what we call the Baynard Cove outfall on Sea Pines Drive. The previous leisure trail railing was in great disrepair and something that probably was constructed again 30 some odd years ago. A couple other updates and things that we've been working on. Recently noticed our flower rotation, our new flowers were installed for the fall season. And we're working on this week installing, believe it or not, our fall holiday or winter lighting displays for the holiday season. Hard to believe that we're almost at the time to celebrate Christmas and New Year's once again. But those holiday lights will be installed this week and be turned on next week through the beginning of January. A couple additional updates on the stormwater. As I mentioned earlier, the town in Hilton Head has been working hand in hand with CSA throughout the entire season, and the town and their contractors have probably spent more time in Sea Pines making these what we refer to as point repairs throughout the community. 50 feet here, 100 feet there, 20 feet somewhere else. We recently completed the drainage and most important drainage project in Canvasback Road area, as well as some additional work in the South Beach area as well. This is all part of our master stormwater drainage and essential for evacuating that stormwater out to the Calabogie Sound. The town of Hilton Head has been working hand in hand with CSA on the Lawton Canal pump station. As I mentioned, taking this water out of the community is really important. The Lawton Canal pump station serves an essential and critical service to our community, and the town will be making additional repairs throughout the winter season on a new pump shed, installing new components, and upgrading the 3 pumps that are present in the building. This will get Sea Pines fully automated into the coming years so we can respond to these significant storms as they come up and down the East Coast. Other things that the town has been working on with CSA is Battery Road and also, again, I mentioned Canvasback and Beach Walk 25. These are essential repairs that were flooding those neighborhoods within the community. J.R. Richardson, our MEMP chair, will comment to a few regarding North Sea Pines Drive, our upcoming roadway project, but I did want to mention a couple things this morning. We've been working behind the scenes on both permitting and engineering, and we're nearing the point in time where we're looking to start the project, with installation of silt fence and so forth here before the holidays, and then looking to break ground hopefully after the first of the year. Again, I'll let JR comment to some of those details, but this is a very invasive project which involves reconstruction of the roadway, leisure trail, and other components, and mainly the drainage system. In closing, I just want to thank our CSA maintenance team for being so responsive to the community's needs. They're a critical component of this community on a day-to-day basis. And I did want to thank our maintenance staff for all their efforts, especially in this trying season, as it has been a very unique one at that. One final note, we have been receiving a lot of calls for mailbox repairs for new members of our community. I do want to remind everyone they could reach our maintenance department at 843-671-7849 to request a new nameplate or repairs on their mailbox. We have been receiving a lot of calls, but again, if you're new to the community and need a new name on that mailbox, please give us a call. So thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Russell. Any questions? Carolyn, you have a question for Russell?
Russell, is there an email or a text number that we could send a mailbox request to, or do we have to actually make the phone call and talk to somebody?
It's on the web.
Yep. It would be at CSA seapinesmaintenance.com. I could follow up with Amanda and provide that to the community as well. We do receive some requests through our website. but the good majority of our requests do come via email. Again, we could provide that as a follow-up to this meeting today.
So is it fair to say that if somebody does want mailbox attention, if they send an email to csacpinesmaintenance.com, it will get attended to, it will get in the queue?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just add, Larry, that as you see the number of things he talked about, there's just a number of other projects that they're working on that are smaller things, but these are some of the larger things that the MEMP committee and the drainage, and the maintenance department work on daily. And we have a brilliant crew down there working on these things. And I think you're beginning to see the differences that we're making. As far, for instance, I'll give you, I think there's sand fencing on beach truss, minor thing, but it works, and it makes a big difference to our sand dunes out on the beach. I don't really think I can add too much to what Russell said in regards to the North Sea Pines Drive construction project, except that it's a major project. It requires total restabilization of the road, much more so than we did with Greenwood Drive, and it's going to be very invasive, but it's going to be it's definitely needed and drastically needed, and it will beautify the community in the end. Since it's going to be done in two parts, one's going to be done in January, February, and then the following part will be done later in the year after the season. So if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, David. David, you had some questions, and JR will come back during the MEMP committee report as well. David, you're on mute.
I thought we just did that.
As I drive around, and you may do the same, I come to certain intersections, I notice growth that's gotten so large that it blocks my view, particularly from the left as I enter. Can I send the text to that same site to tell you when I encounter something like that? So it'll help your people to know to trim back some of that at those points?
Yes.
Sure, David, that'd be immensely helpful. We are going to be putting a push this fall to work on some of the sight lines around Sea Pines. Again, this is something that we routinely do throughout the year. We'll be putting a real push on that, especially leisure trails and at those roadway intersections. But you can send an email to CSA Maintenance, cpines.com to bring that to our attention would be immensely helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Cassidy.
Yeah, Russell, great report. A question I have is you made the comment, and we're going to be talking later about the referendum, and a key part of the infrastructure deterioration has been drainage. You mentioned a lot of areas where you've, like the Lawton Pump Station, other places. If on a scale of 1 to 10, are we biting at it at all, or do we still have like a huge amount of work ahead? Just kind of want to get a relative, because it sounds like a lot of activity, but I think when you look at the overall scope of all the miles of drainage, are we making a dent or not?
Good morning, Jim, and thank you for the question. Really appreciate it. Certainly, this is my third season here, and I believe we all know the history on the funding in Sea Pines and kicking the can down the road. And a lot of these drainage repairs over the years were done even without engineering involved. Since the last 3 years, we've had a high level of engineering involved on our couple significant projects, Greenwood Drive, Lighthouse Road, to speak of two, which we've been able to replace some of that drainage pipe underneath the road that was failing. We spoke about North Sea Pines Drive, which is another mile of road that, again, will make a dent, but when you look at the overall picture, 65 miles of roadway the CSA owns, and some on 36 miles of pipe, drainage pipe, 17 miles of leisure trails, over 6 miles of ditches. We've made in my estimation, we've certainly made some inroads, but nothing near what we need to do in a somewhat quick manner over the next few years ahead. The drainage system is failing faster than we could make these repairs. Now, the town's been excellent in response in making those repairs, but again, these are point repairs. 50 feet here, 100 feet there, 20 feet in another location. Again, these are very, what I would describe as Band-Aids on the system at best. Again, these pipes that are in the ground are corrugated metal. A lot of them were impacted by salt water. Other pipes are simply rolled up tar paper to the tune of about 6 miles on most of the T streets of that type of pipe. We can't even clean it. We can't run any sort of equipment through that pipe, as it will deteriorate essentially in our hands. So again, to answer your question, yes, we've made some progress, but we have a very, very long way to go. And in regards to the referendum, we need the money to be able to do this and do it in a efficient and effective manner moving forward. And again, this is from what I've seen in my last 3 seasons, the rate of failure, especially with significant rains. If we just missed probably half a dozen storms this year, with any significant rain, a couple inches or more, get one of these downpours, and our system is failing fast. You know, the calls come into maintenance and we respond. We respond very quickly. But again, when you have 36 some odd miles of pipe out there, and you know, these failures that you potentially are not seeing right away, again, we have a long way to go. So
Thank you, Russell. And Russell, one comment that I might want to suggest is, you said CSA owns roads. I think it is probably proper to characterize it that all of us as homeowners own these roads. These are private roads that are owned collectively and represented by CSA. So this is all of our problem.
that's correct.
Jim and the board, just want to touch on a couple of things that Russell said. And Jim, you raised the question a bit. You know, we have a fantastic relationship with the town of Hilton Head, and over the past 5 years, they've spent on average about $210,000 inside the gates of Sea Pines working on emergency point source repairs on our drainage system. And we're glad to be able to get those folks to come in and do that. And I give Russell and his team a lot of credit with the relationship they developed with the town. But it is not, it's not what the future holds for us. We can't continue to, as Russell's analogy is tremendous, it is nothing but a Band-Aid. And we have been very fortunate throughout the community that we haven't had larger problems this season. But as an example, we had a pipe fail that the town came in and helped us with at South Beach, and they spent a significant amount of money, but it fell in front of South Beach Marina and the Salty Dog. And so that you know, business partner has 2 entrances into their business, and that pipe failed in front of one of them. And the further we worked with the town, the more failure we found. And that business entrance was closed for the bulk of the season. And that could have happened anywhere in this community. We're fortunate it happened in a location, if fortunate is the right word, where there were actually 2 entrances into that business, because it could have happened into businesses that only have 1 entrance, or into neighborhoods that only have 1 entrance, or roads that only have 1 entrance. So the thought that the town may come in and do anything more than repair emergencies when they have the time and the resources, and those 2 things are critical, because the town has a very limited budget that they have to spread all over the island and make what I would call significant improvements to our drainage system. That's a non-starter for us. We can't rely on the town any more than we have. Again, not knocking the town, appreciate the work they've done and the resources they've spent here, but we've got to solve this drainage situation on our own. And then one final point, appreciate what the town has done for Lawton Canal and the repairs they've made there, and understand for the community and for the board, Lawton Canal is not just a pump station for the Sea Pines. That is a pump station for all of the Caligny area. All the water that drains out of that area comes through Lawton Canal. So it wasn't just for Sea Pines, it was for the entire area of the island that they were making those repairs. And thankfully, those are repairs that have been taken care of by the town, because quite honestly, we don't have the resources to do it and wouldn't have the resources to do it in the way it needed to be done. So just want the board and the community to know that, yes, the town does put dollars into Sea Pines. It's on an emergency basis, and it's on a regional basis for Lawton Canal, but it is not what we need, and it does not come anywhere close to solving the problems or the issues we have as it relates to long-term drainage solutions.
Thanks, Sam. And I think it's fair to say, because the questions came up when the story in the packet came out, that the town was collecting money from all of us as a tax, and why weren't we using that money? Like most taxes that we pay, the fact that Sea Pines is one of the wealthier communities on the island, we probably pay more in than we get out in almost anything that happens. I think it's true in the county, it's true in the town, probably true in the state for some places, that where you pay a lot of taxes doesn't mean you don't get it all back. And so I think it's fair to say that the amount of money that they can spend on us is a fraction of what we need to fix. We're doing the best we can to get as much as we can, but the fact that we pay up more in doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get the exact amount back out. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a very fair statement.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on then. Are there any questions for Russell or on this issue? If not, we'll move on to our good friend, David Henderson. David, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Just wanted to provide you with a few brief updates, starting with COVID. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have had 3 CSA staff members that have tested positive. We believe the employees were exposed away from the workplace. Distancing, hand washing, wearing masks, and testing has thus far prevented the spread of infection amongst employees. As we enter the cold and flu season, cases are trending up, so just wanted to encourage all community members to remain vigilant and to take precautions that are appropriate for their specific circumstance. We are now accepting reservations for use of the covered pavilion at Tower Beach. Due to COVID restrictions, the group size is limited to 30, and an additional COVID release must be signed. Moving on to the Sea Pines Forest Preserve, our annual drive is ongoing. We appreciate all those that have made a contribution to date. We are currently preparing for planting of the wildflower field, and with the support of Lawton Stables, we'll begin construction on a new dedicated horse bridge across Lawton Canal soon. If you haven't had an opportunity to make a contribution, please consider our natural treasure during your year-end giving. And lastly, I'd like to bring to your attention that Six Oaks Cemetery will be honoring our veterans during its 11th annual Wreaths Across America ceremony. You are cordially invited to attend the ceremony, which will be held outside. It's on Saturday, December 19th at noon. If you're interested in sponsoring a wreath, please contact CSA for additional information. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Do we have any questions for David? Thank you, David, very much for that report. Next and last is safety, security, and transportation. Toby McSwain. Toby, there you are.
Good morning, everyone. Just a quick update. The calls for service in the security department are continuing. Actually, the month of October, we almost reached 3,000 calls for service, which is more than we've had the entire year. With the rental population still very active here in the community, the calls that we're running, covenant violations along with ARB violations, we ran 129 of those during the month of October. Improper parking, our noise complaints continuing. Motor vehicle collisions, we had 6 last month. Some were 4 of those were pretty significant vehicle crashes. In addition, our wildlife calls, as you could imagine, are continuing. I would like to point out that in the Forest Reserve, we are continuing to see a high number of calls coming in reference to coyotes still wandering the Forest Reserve. We have had 2 incidents already where property owners were in the Forest Reserve with their dogs off a leash, and the dogs were attacked by coyotes. So we do ask the community to be vigilant that they are roaming. If you see them, please call. We are still working an active trapping program, but we're never going to be able to completely eliminate the coyotes in the community. But please be mindful that they are still roaming. Beach patrol, we are working the beach patrol. But before I go on, there's one thing I would like to point out that I've missed here. We have had one home break-in that occurred last week, and I would like to make comment about the security staff. As a result of their efforts, we were able to identify the subject involved in the burglary, as well as recovering the property that was taken from the home. Beaufort County did make an arrest this past Saturday on this individual. And we asked the community, if you're going to go out of your home, regardless of how short it is, you should lock your door at all times. Whether you're going for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever the case may be, you should lock your home at all times. We have also had a car break-in. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised that it's taken us this long, because every other community on Hilton Head has been the subject of car break-ins that has been quite a bit. And we have one, and I use the term break-in loosely because the car was not locked, it was unlocked, and items were removed from the inside. So we ask if you don't have anything in your car and you want to leave it unlocked and let people go in it and pillage through it, and there's nothing for them to get, then that's fine. But we ask that you please keep your vehicles and your homes locked, because we do have activity in the neighborhood. But I want to say, on the hard work of the security department, I am happy that an arrest was made in this burglary. Going back to the beach patrol is continuing. We are normally, this time of the year, we would not have anyone on the beach, but with the active rental population that we're having on our nicer days, we are continuing the beach patrol. So the cooler days, you probably won't see the officer out there. We're alternating that officer between doing the beach patrol and doing house checks, but we are continuing our beach patrol as well. The security or the welcome center property owner passes still remain high. We are issuing roughly over 600, on the average of 600 property owner passes a day. So the property owners are continuing to call in passes for guests and friends. We are still continuing to work with our IT company as far as security software. I will say the what we have seen so far and the advancement and the customization that they are doing, it is moving along quite nicely. We will have another demonstration that we're scheduling here soon, and I think Stephen is working on getting that scheduled. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have as far as an update. We did have a safety or a gate entry committee meeting. As everyone knows, with COVID, it's kind of hard to plan. We are continuing to work of getting the trolley program scheduled again for next year. I believe the Beach Club will start their attendant on March 26th. So we would anticipate starting the beach trolley somewhere on around March 26th, and then thereafter the full trolley program. We had very few, roughly about 17,000 people rode the trolley the entire season this year, compared to 90,000+ the year before. So COVID has drastically affected the trolley program. We just don't have the ridership that we've had in the past. But that's all I have. If anyone has any questions.
Any questions for Toby? Seeing none, we will move on. Before we do, I want to make just a short remarks. I became chairman as a new chairman at the same time that we had a new president. And the ability to transition leadership was made incredibly much easier by the fact that we have such strong directors and such a great staff. I want to include Sandra Archer, who you all can't see because I won't put her in the picture, but, but who is in fact a right arm to Sam and I in making sure that we do everything exactly as we're supposed to, since I certainly had no idea all the things that need to be done. We went through COVID in a way that most communities would have had very difficult. Sam was able to manage with his directors to keep our community thriving at a time when we went from having no tourists to having more tourists than we ever expected. We've been able, I think, to accommodate all the requests, the reasonable requests that the community's made, and we'll continue to do so. So I do want, on behalf of the board, to thank Sam and the CSA directors and the entire staff for the job well done this year, and particularly on my behalf as chairman for all the help that you've given me in keeping the ship at least semi in the right direction, if not generally afloat. So with that, I will turn to the financial update and our treasurer, Mr. Borghese.
Sam, at what point in time can we deal with the contract?
Let's do it as part of the budget adoption. We'll just talk about it then, if that's all right.
Well, that's what's on the first thing on the agenda, so let's
get on, let's do it then.
Okay, well, one of the major things of the 2021 budget really has to do with North Sea Pines Drive. And North Sea Pines Drive is about ready to get going. We've got a bid from the general contractor.
Blythe Construction. Blythe Construction is.
Blythe Construction, and I think that's the first thing as a board we need to approve. And once that's approved, then we can go on to the budget because those numbers are included in the budget.
That is correct. So
I'm going to let you handle that.
So what staff would recommend is that the board authorize staff to enter into a contract with Blythe Construction for the reconstruction and rebuild of North Sea Pines Drive.
And that would actually be phase one from the gate to Lighthouse Road.
That is correct. Yes, sir. Starting in this year, and we'll be construction will be carrying over into the first quarter of next year, and then picking back up probably the end of the third, the beginning of the fourth quarter of 2021 to finalize construction.
Sam, would you mind explaining the process? You don't need to give the details, but the process we went through to determine that this was the best bid?
Yes, sir. We brought outside engineering consultants in to help us go through the North Sea Pines Drive. In doing so, we brought in an additional geotech consultant, and with the geotech engineering firm and the project engineering firm, went through really from the gate all the way to Lighthouse Road, determining what was in the ground, what wasn't in the ground, what had failed in the ground, what little was in the ground, and what needed to be fixed. And it's comprehensive and in-depth engineering design and review that we could put together. We put those out in the bid, qualified for local construction firms, had them on site really throughout the process of developing the bid, so they knew what we were looking for. And at the end of the process, submitted those, asked those four qualified firms for bids, received 2 bids. Two chose not to bid on the project, 2 did, and the bid that we're recommending with Blythe is the low bid through our construction company. Our engineering contractor has reviewed the bid, has reviewed Blythe's proposal, and they fully recommend Blythe to us, and we as a staff recommend it to the board.
Thing you. I think it's important for us all to recognize the amount of work that went into this. It wasn't just put your finger in the air and say, thumb through the phone book and touch a construction company.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, this is the level of work moving ahead on the rest of Sea Pines Drive and the other road and reconstruction projects that we're going to need to put into the actual construction drawings and the construction plans when we send them out to bid. So, if there's anything I could say, we had hoped we would have gotten all 4 of the qualified contractors to bid on this project. The 2 we had are very qualified. Blythe certainly is a very qualified contractor. The challenge, as we've all talked about, is working in Sea Pines. We're at the end of the line. It's hard to get a plethora of bids on projects like this, but we do feel comfortable with the bid we got and the scope of service. And so we do recommend moving forward with Blythe.
Jim Caskey?
Sam, could you elaborate a little bit on and remind us on the value of the contract and the timeline that Blythe is to perform in?
So Blythe will begin performing, Jim, in as soon as we award this bid today. Blythe will begin to go out and to lay out the drainage improvements, and we hope to see all the construction. What's the word I'm looking for? All the fencing, the silt fencing, all the markings, the project basically laid out by the end of this month, beginning of December. And then we hope to start turning dirt on the drainage piece before the end of the year. So the goal is to really get the drainage piece going and fix as much of the drainage as we can in the last part of this year, the first quarter of next year, have the drainage work completed, and then having things sit there while we go through the busy season, and then come back in the end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter, finalize the paving, finalize the finish work on the road. And we'll be updating the community regularly on all this as we move through it. You know, Jim, the range of the work is it's over $3 million worth of work, and I probably just need to leave it there from a unit cost with Blythe. I don't want to get into too many details of it, but I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have on it.
Sam, this is Steve.
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
The roadway, would it continue to stay open for traffic, or would there be periods that the road would need to be closed?
No, we fully intend to keep the roadway open for traffic, Steve, and that's part of the challenges we have with that section of roadway is there really isn't an opportunity to close that road and to reroute traffic. You've got individual homeowners there, property owners there, as well as one of the main entranceways into the community. So our intention is to have that roadway open while construction is going on. So there will be significant traffic control devices out there, as well as traffic control folks keeping traffic flowing while the work is going on.
There will be minor stoppages.
Certainly there will be those, JR, but actually closing the road down, we will not be closing that road down.
But I think it's fair to say, once this thing starts, people should expect that some delay, more delays than usual. And we'll obviously encourage you, if you don't need to go that way, to use other means to get to your destination.
Certainly, and Russell and his team have done a really good job working with commercial vendors that use North Sea Pines Drive to their entrance into the community, and trying to time and schedule that so that there's minimal congestion and conflicts between the large trucks coming in and those things. But the challenge is going to be, it's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it will be an inconvenience at times. We're going to do our best to keep it from being too bad an inconvenience, and we will have it back opened. It won't be finished, but it will be opened by the time busy season comes back around.
Any other questions?
And that's a total length of construction of like 1.5 miles or 2?
I believe it's about 1.1 miles. Russell, is that correct?
Yeah, it's 1.1.
Yeah, so $3 million for 1 mile. So,
roughly,
do
yes.
you need a motion?
Yeah, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the contract. I'll come back for discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded. Dave Borghese, you had a question?
No, I was going to make the motion.
Oh, okay.
Somebody already preempted me.
Is there any other discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the contract, raise your hands, please. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now we'll put it back to David. Your next subject is the approval of the 2021 budget.
Thank you. I'd first like to start off by going through the assessment first before we get to the budget.
Okay.
And this has to do with the residential property owners and the application of the consumer price index to the base. And if you go through this calculation you see on the board is consistent with the way the CPI has been calculated every year that I've been associated with CSA. And it arrives at a 1.38% inflator. That would cause the improved lot homeowner assessment, residential homeowner assessment, to go from $1,095 to $1,110, a $15 increase. Unimproved lots are at 60% of the improved lots, and you can see that it will go up to $661 for an unimproved lot. This calculation and explanation has been reviewed by the Finance Committee, who approved and recommended acceptance of this calculation to the board, and I would like to so move that this CPI factor be enacted for the 2021 homeowner residential
Second.
percent.
That's the second. Is there discussion? Can we stop share? So I can see the board. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? It is consistent with the way we've done in the past. I think it reflects the fact that it's a mere $15, which I don't mean to minimize at $15, but I know that's about 3 hamburgers at McDonald's. But it also suggests that it shows how little we can raise for our operating expense and capital expenses on a regular basis. And when you think about the fact that there's discussion talking about increasing minimum wage substantially more than that, and we obviously are at our needs at the end of the line, maybe even greater. So I urge us to support this. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Raise your hands, please. Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion passes, and the new assessment for 2021 will be $1,110
For an improved lot.
for an improved lot, $661 for an unimproved lot.
Correct.
And I think, Victoria, you told me that the goal is to get the bills out as early as possible.
That's correct. Now that we've gotten approval, we can go ahead and start the process.
And that, so you should be getting your bills soon. They'll be due when would they be due?
January 11th.
January 11th. And I want to stress, if the referendum is adopted today, there'll be some overlap. We are trying to get the bills out early as possible. So if you can write the check, even if you don't want to send it in until later, so it's not on your mind. David, back to you for the budget.
What I'd like to do now is to go through the proposed budget for 2021. And we'll share a screen on that. Let's move all the way up. Okay. So the first line, which is residential assessment, you can see that the annual forecast, which is essentially what we've already experienced of 6.4 million, will go up to 6.5 million, an increase of $88,000, which is essentially the 1.3% that we just passed. If you look at the other property owner assessments, primarily resort commercial, and the reduction in the 2021 budget is a result of COVID and the impact on gross receipts for those organizations being declined in 2020, and that will affect our 2021 assessment. Daily gate pass is now being budgeted based upon the number of passes issued in 2019 times the current daily gate fee rate of $9. And that's how we get to a favorable variance compared to 2020. Again, COVID affected in 2020. We are seeing increases in short-term rentals, and we factored that in. And the rest of the operating revenues are pretty consistent with prior year, not having really any significant effect on the COVID. So our operating revenues, we are budgeting at $12.5 million. Let's move down. Here you'll see operating expenditures, and here are some very significant impacts because of the way we are currently looking at how we are running the operation. You'll see almost, I wouldn't say it's 10%, but it's closer to 7 or 8% increase in maintenance. This is not really inflation. This is the scope of work that is being increased primarily due to what I'll call maintenance on dredging, which are planning on significantly increasing the amount of what I'll call recurring maintenance, as well as tree service, our arbor care of our trees. Safety and security is really a need to increase the manpower. Toby just told you about the number of calls we were getting, the increase in tourist activity, and a need to increase our staffing. Trolley operations are up only because the expenditures in 2020 were down because we deferred or canceled trolley operations for a good part of the spring season. So the budget for 2021 is very consistent with the 2020 budget, just getting us back to normal operations. And general administration is up primarily due to in our expected increases in our January 1 renewals for insurance, as well as anticipated payroll, base payroll increases over and above what the 1.3% inflation. We're probably looking closer to 3 to 4%. And facilities is pretty consistent with the prior year. There's really not much going on. What you can see is that we're looking at almost $700,000 more in operating expenses, which only leaves $1,754,000 for major repairs, replacements, capital, and the like before depreciation. If we can move further down. The one item here you can see in major repairs and replacements, I'd like to go over. First of all, I'd like to go over the projection for 2020, that the $3 million number that you see there. That is essentially our budget for repair, MR&R, plus $750,000, which is our estimate of what the initial cost during this calendar year for North Sea Pines Drive. Going on to 2021, which is 2.9 million, that really breaks out in three separate categories. First category is the completion of North Sea Pines Drive during 2021, and that's $2,350,000. So if you add the 750 and 2,351,000, that's $3.1 million, and that's essentially the bid that we've got from Blythe Construction. We also have contract work for ditch digging and drainage, and that's a $400,000 bid for using third-party contractors to start that project. And then there's about another $190,000 worth of boardwalk facilities and other miscellaneous MR&R items that normally just reoccur. If we go down here, this is fairly standard. You'll notice that the investment income is declining. That is declining because we're in a no interest rate environment. So as we spoke earlier, we are more interested in actually using our reserves rather than investing them at less than 1%. We think we get more bang for the buck by doing a lot of the first phase of North Sea Pines Drive, basically from our reserves before we get $1 from the referendum that we'll be talking about. Going further down, you'll see that shows that we'll have a deficit in 2021 of $2.1 million, and that we expected. We keep on going further down, we do what is essentially a back of the envelope cash flow. It basically adds back those items that are really not cash oriented, such as depreciation and change in market values of our investment. But then we notice that there's about $400,000 worth of capital expenditures. These capital expenditures, and if you look at 2020 and 2021, I will tell you that on average, these are far below normal. Over a 7 or 8 year period, our average capital expenditures is about $600,000 to $650,000 per year, but it really gyrates depending on what equipment we have to replace. And in 2021, we are basically looking at a whole number of ordinary replacements. Every one of them is less than $50,000. So it's vehicles, things of that nature. That are, again, just normal replacement for those items that wear out and need to be replaced. So that is the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I can tell you that the Finance Committee went through this at our last meeting, and they are recommending approval of this budget to the board.
Okay. Are there questions for David on this budget? I do want to recognize that the deficit is exactly what we anticipated in our decision to go ahead and spend out of the reserves money. As David said, we did it because we wanted to get started on the critical infrastructure. As it turns out, with the 0 or very low interest rates on investments, it's a good use of our money anyway. But we also made the decision not to start the referendum and to not be able to collect the taxes until 2022. So we knew this was coming, and we know over time we'll have to come essentially repay ourselves to rebuild our reserves. Bill Johnson?
Dave, question. We've got a projected or budget increase on our gate entry and permit fee revenue streams. However, you're predicting a 20% decrease in the Sea Pines Resort and commercial assessments. Can you explain that?
Yeah, those assessments are based on the adjusted gross receipts formula, by which there's a percentage that is applied to adjusted gross receipts. And clearly the commercial entities suffered greatly from closure of their facilities in April, May, and parts of June. So we're anticipating that their adjusted gross receipts will be less in this year, which affects the 2021 assessment.
So that's reflective of calendar 2020 actual.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
They're always we're collecting our assessment a year for the past year, and we're budgeting for income on gate passes and gate receipts for the current year.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
That's a good question. Jim Caskey?
Yeah, we had approved at prior board meetings to spend the reserves while we look to pass this referendum. Dave, could you speak? Are we still within our reserve policies as we draw this money out? Our limits?
Let's just say that if the referendum passes, we'll be fine. If the referendum doesn't pass, we're going to have to figure an alternative course of action to stay within our limitations.
Other questions for David? Okay, well, David, do you want to make a motion?
I would like to move that the board adopt the budget for 2021 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded from Scott. Any other further questions for David on the budget? Hearing none, all in favor of passing the budget? Raise your hand. Any opposition? Seeing none, the budget has been approved.
Thank you.
Okay, we have moved the item, what was item 11A up to be 9C, which is the referendum. Let me just start by, actually you can pull the proposed Fifth Amendment up. This is obviously a momentous day for us. We, as I again said earlier, started the year with the notion that we were going to find a long-term revenue source to fund our critical infrastructure for any number, and lots of reasons you put down to.
You don't need the wherefores.
For lots of reasons, it's taken us this long to get to I think what we all hoped would be the case, which was another referendum. We have an alternative source, as earlier noted, which is the special tax district, which our staff continues to work with council and the county. This is no slam dunk. As we started the process for the special tax district, it was with the concern that a referendum at a 75% hurdle would be a very difficult proposition and would take time. It still is no slam dunk, although I'm extremely pleased at the outpouring of support that I've received at my email, that we've received at comments, and that we've seen on the various Facebook pages that deal with sea pines. But that said, there are in fact folks who have indicated concerns about the proposed referendum, some of which I hope we can respond to and answer today through showing the folks what the proposal is, but some of which folks will never be satisfied. And we understand that there is a minority view as to who should be paying for what and how much. And there are folks who, despite their efforts to be part of the board, have not been successful and are necessarily as a minority frustrated. I understand that. But I would ask today, as you see this referendum proposal, and you look at what we're asking of each homeowner to fix their roads and their stormwater, things we've been talking about now for nearly 3 years, to recognize that there is a time at which to oppose the board because you don't like them or you weren't included on them or for whatever, or there's a time to put that all aside and vote for what the community needs. We've been telling you for years, and I started this by noting we were not going to kick the can down the road. The roof is collapsing. You heard Russell talk about it. You've seen what we need to spend on the oldest road in Sea Pines, and that's just one of the many roads that is failing. And so as we go through this discussion today, I urge everyone to recognize that we are asking you to consider what's in the interest of the community. We're going to go through the process, and I'll try to respond to some of the concerns we've seen, and I hope respond to them fairly. I would also ask, after you see what we're proposing, if after you get your ballot, if after you get any information from CSA this week or this month or next month, you still have a concern, write to CSA, to comments at csacpines.com or chairman at csacpines.com and tell us what your concern is. And I promise you, we will seek to answer it. It's a lot harder to do that on Facebook when people are responding to each other than it is to come to the source. And so you'll hear that from me on a regular basis. If you have a concern, come to us. Before we go to the actual, I do want to, well, let's focus on what the proposal is. If you can move it down so we start at the top of 2. So after you will see the actual amendment itself has a lot of legalese, which we will be happy to have you see on the website. But at the end of the day, what we are doing is amending the 1974 covenants, not by changing Article 3, which is the way the last referendum proposed to do it, and mixing new monies into the existing base assessment, but rather by creating a new infrastructure improvement fund, which will read as follows. The infrastructure fund is a new fund that is hereby created entitled the Infrastructure Improvement Fund, and which is delineated as a restricted fund. Okay, I'm gonna pull my glasses out. A restricted fund, sorry.
You want me to read it for you?
Yeah, no. To be used for the repair, replacement, addition, and improvement of the roads, bridges, bulkheads, leisure trails, stormwater facilities, and systems located in or serving sea pines, defined as that parcel of land described in Exhibit A to the 1974 covenants. And before we get to the funding issue itself, I want to note, because there's been some concern that we might be using these funds for other than the purposes listed, for example, to improve the gallery of shops. Please note the word building does not appear in this list. We won't be spending any of this money on any building in Sea Pines or that is owned by CSA. So I hope that this description is sufficient to allay that concern. Moving down, please. The infrastructure improvement shall be funded and enforced as follows. Participating property owners of record as of January 1, 2022 shall contribute annually $360 per residential lot, which is a lot that has not been improved, and there are roughly 74 of those, and $600 per family dwelling unit, which is defined as a lot that has been improved, to the Infrastructure Improvement Fund. This amount shall be adjusted annually in the same manner as the participating property owner annual assessments pursuant to paragraph A2 of Article 3. I'll get back to that in a second. Second, the company, which is the resort today. The company commencing January 1, 2022, the company shall annually contribute 0.25% of its adjusted gross resort revenue earned during the each immediately preceding calendar year to the Infrastructure Improvement Fund. The additional amount shall be adjusted annually in the same manner as the participating property owner annual assessments pursuant to paragraph A2. Again, similar to what we're doing with the participating property owners. Now, this point, I want to stress, this 0.25% is a separate assessment from any other assessment that the company, the resort, is paying. It is not being paid under the general assessment. It's a separate assessment under this improvement fund. Continuing down to C. The owners of business land commencing January 1, 2022, lease business and commercial facilities owned by the company and owners of business land, commercial landlords, shall contribute annually on behalf of their tenants 0.36 per square foot for the first floor tenants and 0.27 per square foot for second floor tenants, the commercial tenant annual assessment. The annual assessment shall be adjusted annually in the same manner as the participating property owner annual assessment pursuant to paragraph A2 of Article 3, which I'll get back to. At the date of the assessment of the commercial tenant annual assessment, any unoccupied space will be excluded from the contribution. Any unoccupied business or commercial space becoming leased during any calendar year shall result in a commercial tenant annual assessment. Said commercial tenant annual assessment shall be prorated monthly throughout the calendar year. And then beginning in 2023, the commercial tenant annual assessment shall be increased annually for 3 years in the amount of 0.04 for the first floor tenants and 0.03 for the second floor tenants, so that in 6 years, they will have added 12 cents to the first floor and 9 cents to the second floor, in addition to the CPI adjustment. And I want to note that that is virtually verbatim, other than the references to the new fund, what was in the 2019 assessment. And then collection, delinquent or unpaid contributions to the Infrastructure Improvement Fund required by this Article 5 shall accrue interest and be collectible in the same manner as delinquent annual and special assessments described in Article 3, which allows us for people who do not pay to put a lien on their property for this amount, as well as for to stop any other privileges that they may have pursuant to the base annual assessment. I want to go back to the paragraph A, Article 3, paragraph A with 2, which is the adjustment. Under our current covenants, and I'm going to read you that what the board can do is to increase, I'll read specifically. In determining annual assessments, the board may determine an assessment that is greater or less than or the same as the assessment for the previous year, provided that no such increase shall exceed the increase in the consumer price index for the most recent 12-month period prior in such determination. And I stress increase or decrease because there has been some question as to why we don't have a sunset. And the reason we are not proposing a sunset in this covenant change is because the board in the future has the ability, if it determines that the fund has gotten great enough to meet the future demands, to simply reduce the amount in this fund or eliminate it, if they so choose, down to $1. This gives future boards, not those you elected today, but those you'll elect in the future, the ability to do what is necessary to fix sea pines. If they feel they have enough money and they don't need more, they'll reduce it. And if they don't reduce it, I presume the property owners at the time will elect new people who will. But we don't believe it's appropriate for a board in 2020 to try and decide what the needs of a board in 2030 or 2035 or even 2025 will need to fix the critical infrastructure. We can certainly project out the best we can, but we didn't believe a sunset is necessary. So with that, that is the referendum proposal that we're putting on the table. Our goal is to create a very simple ballot that will have a cover letter explaining what people need to do. It will have a very simple one-page ballot, which we expect will be in a different color with a different envelope. And we will probably mail the proposed article in its entirety, which with all the legalese, so people will have it if they want to read it, but they'll be able to understand from the very simple letter and the simple ballot exactly what they're approving. We intend to get that out on December 10th. We will give 35 days to January 15th for return of ballots. I want to note that the bylaws limit return of ballots to 30 days, but our covenants, which control where there's a conflict with the bylaws, provide 30 to 60 days. And we are recommending that we provide that extra 5 days so that people have 15 days from when the ballots are mailed before Christmas and 15 days after the ballots are mailed from New Year's. We don't want to squeeze this. I should note, obviously, we've been sending out a lot of materials to friends in the neighborhood and our neighbors. We've sent out the ballot for the Board of Elections. We'll be sending out assessments. But we're going to do the best we can to get this ballot be unique and different. We don't want to delay the ballot until next year because we have the momentum now, and candidly, delaying this ballot when we have a lot of people thinking about it simply loses that momentum. So with that, those are my remarks. It's open for questions, concerns, comments. That's impressive. I would like to have Sam go back through the budget for the benefit of those who are watching today, so that we'll explain how we ended up getting to 3.5 million per year, 35 million for those who may have any questions. Sam?
Okay, Victoria. Good. Thank you. No, you can drive. I'll do my best to narrate, and I will ask Mr. Borghese, as always, to keep me straight if I misspeak. So as the board is familiar, well, let me back up. Over the summer, staff was asked to identify what we felt were the critical infrastructure projects that this community needed to deal with over the next 10 years. And while we're working through the revenue funding concerns and how we come up with that, with the revenues we're going to need to do these things, staff took a hard look at where we were as a community and what was out there that needed to be fixed both in the near term and the long term over the next 10 years. And we built this out of really three things. We built this out of the reserve study that's done annually, which we've talked about and this board's familiar with. The reserve study takes a hard look at those capital expenditure needs that we have, as well as the infrastructure project needs that we have, and how to fund those on an annual basis. It's updated approximately every 3 years. Victoria, the last update was done last year?
May
this year.
May of this year. So we're working off a reserve study that was updated May of this year. But as we've talked about, the reserve study does not include drainage, roads, vehicles, trails, beach access. When I say beach access, what I'm really referring to are the boardwalks and the things necessary to get folks from the CSA property across the beach walk to the beach. Took that component. We took the 2016 hydrology study that was done by Pittman Engineering. We looked at the work that they had proposed as it relates to lagoon bank stabilization. And I want to be clear when I say that, we're talking about lagoons. And lagoons, if you think about it, they are the primary drainage mechanisms that we have that drain this community. When the master drainage system was designed, everything drains to a lagoon and the lagoons drain to the sound. And so those lagoons have been doing their job for the past 60 years and continue to do their job, but they are failing. They have silted in and the banks are failing. And so we're losing those lagoons, and we've got to go back in and we've got to do some significant work in those lagoons to stabilize them and to deepen them. And that came out of the hydrology study, as well as replacing pipe, ditch restoration. We talked about previously what we need to do with the ditches. We're going to begin a small piece of that next year with the budget you just adopted. And then we had to figure out under the reserve study, it talks about the roads that we need to do and the milling and the paving work, but again, it doesn't talk about the drainage issues. So we took the reserve study, we took the hydrology study, and then we looked, okay, what are the roads? What are the infrastructure pieces? And I emphasize infrastructure because that's all this is about. The chairman has already said it, but I want to reemphasize it again. This has nothing to do with gate improvements. It has nothing to do with the gallery of shops. This has only to do with the things that make Sea Pines function from an infrastructure perspective. And we went through and we identified the major pieces of infrastructure that were out there that needed to be fixed or replaced or added to. And we went through and it's the primary roads. I mean, the primary roads are listed in the reserve study, but North Sea Pines Drive and the timing of that for us has really opened our eyes to the level of work that has to be done on the rest of those primary roads to recover them. And so that's what this represents. Victoria, if you'll
Okay, yes.
Scroll down.
There you go.
The bulk of the $35 million is focused on repair, reconstruction, and rebuild of the primary roads in a way that provides for Sea Pines for the next 60 years. And so that's where these dollars come from. And honestly, that's really where the focus is going to have to be moving ahead. So, the only thing on there that is new is the leisure trail. And for anyone who's been on the leisure trail in the busy season, and it continues to be the busy season to some extent, the current leisure trail is at capacity for most of the year. And from a safety perspective, and to move folks and to keep them off the road so they're not trying to drive back and forth down Lighthouse Road, we've got to add some capacity to that leisure trail. So that's really the only new project in all of this. So I emphasize to the board and the community that this $5.1 million truly is about infrastructure. It's about critical infrastructure. It's about infrastructure that's going to keep Sea Pines moving ahead and functioning. But at the end of the day, if we're not able to fund that $35 million through the referendum or through some other mechanism, what happens is the $16 million at the top of that spreadsheet is all we have to deal with. And so it really becomes, we're doing infrastructure triage for that $16 million. And so those things on the reserve study throughout the rest of the community, that in the residential areas of the community, they will suffer. We won't be able to do the things we need to do in the reserve study because, you know, if you look at the $35 million piece of this spreadsheet, most of that, all of that's primary roads, and you've got to be able to get into the community. I mean, North Sea Pines Drive, again, is the best example. Over $3 million for 1.1 mile worth of road. It is what it is, and there's nothing we can do to change it. Got the same situation if you coming in off of Greenwood, off of the Sea Pine Circle now, coming on Greenwood Drive. When you drive through that road, look at the condition of it. Sea Pines CSA owns that road. We are responsible for fixing it. It's coming. We're going to have to fix and address that road. So if we don't have additional resources of the 35 million, then the things we need to do for the roads coming in, the primary roads, comes out to $16 million. And it really creates a snowball in a way that we do not want this community to be impacted by. Can't even begin to touch the drainage issues and those things. And as Russell Fredericks mentioned earlier, and we've all watched, we watched our friends on the Gulf Coast get pounded by 5 storms this year. 5 storms. The storms are still going on. One of those storms comes through here in a significant way. It doesn't even have to be a hurricane. And that infrastructure that we've been band-aiding with the town, it's going to fail, and it's going to fail all over. And we're going to have a much, much larger mess and problem on our hands. And we won't, this community won't be able to function in the way it needs to function for a long time. And so I encourage folks to see this as what it is. It's truly about infrastructure. It's about drainage. It's about doing what needs to be done to keep the Sea Pines community functioning for the next 50 years. And, you know, some questions have been asked to staff, and they're good questions about how is staff going to manage this additional money. It is a lot of money. It's $35 million in addition to the 16. $51 million is a lot of money over the next 10 years. And I would tell the community what we're going to do is we're going to do it the way we're doing this project. We're going to do it very openly and constructively. We're going to run it through the committees of the board, and we're going to be communicating to the community what we're doing. We're going to prioritize these projects you've got in front of you based on what needs to be fixed first. Where does the dollars need to be spent first? Not what someone may feel is a pet project, but where does it need to happen the most? And there's more work to come on that. And we'll be leaning on the MEMP committee to do that with us, the finance committee to do that with us, the community and the board. So I hope you can hear the passion I have for this, but this is truly, we've got to do this for Sea Pines. Or we're not going to have a community that functions the way any of us wanted to function. So.
Thank you, Sam. I wanted Sam to go through that in detail so everyone would understand that we will continue to do what we can to fix the secondary roads, but those aren't being rebuilt. You've got some what I call major roads, Governor's Road, Club Course, the K, any number of the roads in the South Beach area that are not included in rebuilding that I'm sure have the same problems over time, which goes back to why we don't want to sunset this. One other question that we've gotten a number of is why are we CPIing this 600? Are we CPIing and why? And I think you saw the total increase in the budget from the CPI on our major assessment, David, I think comes out to like $90,000.
Yes, 88,000.
A $90,000 increase. So we are basing this budget on today's dollars, what we know today, but it will also inflate. And if we don't inflate the $600, we're going to continue to be falling behind. Probably at the CPI, because these are construction costs, we may continue to fall behind anyway, but we'll be doing a better job. So we will be CPIing this. We'll be CPIing all 3 of the contributions just to stay at least ahead on today's dollars and to make sure we continue to have enough money. David?
One thing when I read through draft of the resolution for Article 5, it was a little unclear to me as to when the CPI begins. Do we take the 600 and apply the CPI as of the end of this coming year?
No.
Or is it applied for the year after the initial 600?
I think it's the year after.
Well, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that if there is any ambiguity, that gets taken care of or clarified.
We'll make sure of that. Any other questions? Jim? Caskey?
Sam, great job on your schedule. When you talk about Lighthouse Road and you talk about North Sea Pines Drive, those all have a lot of, the leisure path and Lighthouse, those all have a lot of drainage built into those numbers as well. That's just not 2 million to build 2 paths. It's to fix it. And likewise, so this drainage problem, you've got one account at $14.5 million some odd dollars. So there's even more drainage money within those other projects, correct?
Yeah, so the $14.4 million, Jim, just applies to the drainage for the lagoons, the bank stabilization, those things, and the drainage on the secondary and tertiary roads. Example, if we were to do work in Club Course on a road, repave a road in Club Course, and it needs drainage work, and there are roads there that need drainage work. Otter Drive is a great example. That drainage work is not accounted for in the reserve study, but it is accounted for in the $14.4 million. So we would apply the dollars from the reserve study to do the paving, and we would take dollars out of the $14.4 million to do the necessary drainage work to repair that road and make it usable for many, many years. And then that's how that would work across the community. The T streets along the beach, Heritage Woods, wherever there are drainage failures in those areas that aren't primary roads, that's where the dollars would be pulled from to fix the drainage while we're milling and repaving the roads.
Any other questions? If not, I need a motion calling for a call for the referendum to amend the covenants pursuant to the Fifth Amendment as proposed. Dave Ellis, is there a second? Jim Caskey? Because it is a call for a referendum, we need to vote independently. It's the rare time when the board does that. Steve Burwell, I would ask to confirm that the resort approves this referendum. You're on mute, Steve.
Yes, we approve the referendum.
Thank you, Steve. I now need the Class B directors, which is Mr. Caskey, Mr. King, Mr. Sigmund, and Mr. Where is he? Is Bob? Mr. Sowers, if he's still here.
Yeah,
do you approve the referendum with the Class B proposed assessment? Don?
Yes, I approve.
Jim, is it approved? Mark?
Yes.
Mark King? You're on mute. Just raise your hand, Mark. And Mr. Sowers, Bob Sowers, do you approve? Yes. Okay, so the Class B. And now I need the 9 residential RPOs to vote in favor to have the call for the referendum for the $600 assessment addition on the RPOs. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, the call for the referendum then is approved, and we will be sending ballots out on the 10th. Before I leave this subject, again, I want to emphasize to the community that is listening or that may be watching, this is not a slam dunk. We need to get 75% plus 1 of those voting. I believe the more people who vote will be the greater likelihood of reaching that hurdle. And so I'm going to ask everyone who supports this referendum to think of your neighbors who may not be here, who may not be following this issue as greatly, who may be getting envelopes, as we often do around the end of the year, that ask for charity or ask you to vote on some corporate resolution, to take the time to read this ballot and to vote. CSA is going to do everything we can to get out the vote and to get out a positive vote. We will answer every question that's raised. We will answer every legitimate question that's raised, and we will point out where questions are not necessarily legitimate. We will be contacting our community on a regular basis, asking them to vote. But it's going to take your neighbors and friends who support this to talk to the people who may not be following it as closely or who may have valid questions to get the vote out. And so I urge those who are watching today and who may be watching later, please do what you can to support this in every avenue you have to do so. With the last thing we want to do is to have another failed referendum and to have to turn to the special tax district, but we will. This board, and I hope I can speak for next year's board as well, will not allow this community to crumble for lack of funding. That's it. So I'll move on now to the updates from our various committees. JR, where are you?
Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. You're our Architecture Review Board?
Yes. For your report, I have put in the density report, which is self-explanatory, nothing major changed there. The activity at the ARB, hold on just a second, I'm in the car, which I apologize for.
That's okay. I'm going to let you do your MEMP one as well. Still with us? JR?
Are you there?
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. We have had a very busy year. The January through October reports in your report, but I think it's interesting. We had 33 new single-family residences started or completed during this period. We have 58 major additions, which is pretty major. We have 574 smaller additions, 28 pools, 12 commercial permits. There are 7 new improved lots in that process, 3 demos. Our escrow deposits are up about $1.7 million, and application fees are somewhere around $340,000. So it's been an extremely busy year. It's going to continue to be through the end of the year, and I'm not sure. I think this will continue into next year, but I think it's going to ebb off and towards the middle of the year. But that's where we budgeted anyway for our fees. But I'm real impressed with what the things that we've got going and have done, and I'm open for questions.
Any questions with JR on this committee report or his earlier MEMP report, since he added to Russell's?
Yeah, I don't have anything else. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I know you didn't have anything else on MEMP, so if not,
yeah, right.
We'll move on and make sure you drive safely, JR. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Communications, Dave Ellis.
Rather than repeat things that have been said, I'd just like to add to what Amanda has already talked about and discussed. I think everybody in the community should notice that there's been a tremendous amount of increased information that's been passed out as matters are being considered. And I think that, we can send this out, and there's going to be a great many more messages with information, but it is important that if you want to be informed, you have to read it, and and if you have comments, you can send those back so they can be considered. So we are doing substantially on our end what we understand the community wants. We're getting information to you, we're telling you what's going on, and now it's up to you to read that and to communicate back. I appreciate that. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, David. Finance Committee, Mr. Borghese, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, the Finance Committee that met basically recommended approval of what we have approved.
Great.
Done deal.
Thank you, David. Gate Entry Committee, Mr. Corbett. Unmute. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. My report, unfortunately, is not going to be really, really short, but we did have a meeting November 4th. And as we do each meeting, Victoria gave an update on past revenue that is down approximately $375,000. Daily passes are down about 20%. Short-term rental income was up around $70,000. Moving on, Toby reported that the big shuttle and the Sea Pines trolleys procedures for 2021 will remain very similar to what we did in 2020. But we are not planning to discontinue the operations as we did in 2020, but capacity for next year will be down about 50%, at least starting off through this pandemic. And so trying to move through fairly quickly. We did discuss the proposed parking fees that the town of Hilton Head Island is considering on the public beach parking areas and felt that we may need to closely monitor our beach parking areas to see if any daily fee visitors are coming in to access our beaches. Toby also reported on his software updates, and so I won't go into that. We do have 4 task force committees underway. The Hilton Head Breeze Task Force, which Don Sigmund is chairing, and that is ongoing. There's no final decision on that. We're also looking at a bike rental fee increase. Those fees will be addressed in the early part of 2021 as we look at other fee increases. The Gallery of Shops, our president, Sam Bennett, has undertaken this with the town of Hilton Head to pursue raising the structure. This is also ongoing. Sea Pine Circle, Sam Bennett's pursuing this with the town and the officials of Sea Pines or CSA. And this is ongoing, and there'll be further information coming forward as the town has asked us to give input on what needs to be done with our failing Sea Pine Circle. We discussed a proposal from the short-term rental committee about allowing short-term parking for property owners that have recreational vehicles that they use to travel here to the island. To determine the location of where this parking should be, whether there should be a fee attached, the duration of time allowed for the parking, and also should it actually be permitted. This is still being pursued and no decision has been made, but we have had a good many requests from our property owners about these recreational vehicles being able to be parked. So we'll have further updates as we move forward. Toby also spoke about the new property owner identification cards that will have the RFID embedded in them to allow access into the Tower Beach cards, or Tower Beach Club. These cards will be more expensive due to the RFID chip. And we did make a motion to ask the Finance Committee to review charging Sea Pines property owners for the ID card with the embedded RFID chip. And it'd be a fee of around $15. And this basically just covers the cost of those cards. The majority of the committee voted in favor. The motion passed and will go to the Finance Committee. We discussed as a committee about a request from a few of our property owners about allowing low-speed electric vehicles. This is called the LSV. This is not to be confused about golf carts on our roads. These vehicles primarily are like a MOKE, M-O-K-E, and the GEM vehicles. They have a maximum speed of 25 miles an hour. We're continuing to discuss this and want further input from our property owners before a recommendation is presented. These vehicles have been permitted at Palmetto Bluff, and I did hear, not that it's fully substantiated, that I believe Palmetto Dunes has also approved allowing these. Moving on, we discussed about CSA providing electric charging stations in Sea Pines to promote clean vehicles. This was again a recommendation from one of our property owners. This will continue to be discussed, but some felt it was more of a Sea Pines resort consideration than a CSA consideration, but no recommendation has been made. We discussed the growing number of electric bicycles, and Toby brought this up a couple of times about electric bicycles and other types of skateboards, electric skateboards, and others on our paths and roads. Toby reported that they are prohibited in Sea Pines. However, they're very difficult to manage or police and deter when our visitors use them, as do some of our property owners. They are reaching out to our legal team to get advice on how best to approach this situation. This has been also being reviewed and has been with the Safety and Security Committee. We do have a resolution today, resolution number 12A, and it's to ratify and amend the gate entry policy for multiple owner properties. And we'll go on with that. The Resolved Community Service Associates, Inc. Board of Directors ratifies approval on recommendation of the Gate Entry Committee. The following amendment to the Gate Entry Policy, Section 2.1, subsection 2.1.2, to read as follows. Multiple owner properties with multiple owners, trust whose names are specifically listed on these legal documents are considered residential property owners and will be limited to one complimentary property owner decal and property owner ID card each, not to exceed 14 owner members if the LLC or trust consists of husband and wife ownership. Issue up to 4 property owner decals total. Dependent ID cards and relative decals may be issued. This is basically a clarification and a small change to the gate entry policy so that Toby and Sarah at security can better manage multiple ownership properties. Do I have a motion for approval?
I want to discuss.
Okay, is there a motion? Motion made by, has been made by Ms. Adams, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Is there discussion? Mr. Borghese?
Given the discussion regarding the cost of RFID, I would move to eliminate the word complimentary and just leave that blank for now, because once you start saying complimentary and then you start talking about charging more for a RFID card, I think you have an inconsistency. If you just eliminate the word complimentary, you can deal with that at a later date when you need to.
That's very good. I agree.
There's been a motion to amend by taking out complimentary. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Barry seconded. Okay, is there any discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of amending the proposed resolution? Okay, so the proposed resolution now eliminates the word complimentary. Any other comments or discussion or questions for Carrie about that? The motion?
Larry, you asked for some of us to give the policy objectives for 2021.
They haven't taken a vote on this.
Oh, we haven't taken a vote?
No, let's take a, all in favor of the ratifying the amendment?
As amended.
As amended? All opposed? Okay, we've changed the policy to include this. Now, Carrie.
Okay. You had asked about policy objectives for 2021 for the gate entry committee. The gate, and we've got 5 that's on the list. Gate fee increases for various gate fee pass categories will be addressed in first to second quarter. Resolve discussion with Town of Hilton Head and others on the needed improvements for the Sea Pine Circle. Resolve pursuit of removing the Galleria shops while preserving our certain rights. The beach trolley and commercial trolley operations, and resolve low-speed vehicles in Sea Pines. That's my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. I did want to note one thing because Carrie mentioned it a number of times. A number of what that committee looks at and other committees comes from homeowners and property owners who raise the issue with CSA and then we send it to the committee. So if people do have ideas, that the best way, if you're not on the committee itself, best way is to send them to CSA and we'll make sure the proper committee looks at them before they get to the board for final resolution. Okay, next up is governance. Mr. Caskey.
Yeah, good morning. In your packet, there is a resolution under 12A. As we talked earlier, we've worked through governance on committees to say, let's build in a normal rotation of 2 consecutive 3-year terms, ultimately, once we get there, so that every year, a third of the committees are turning over and new ideas, new blood's coming in. So we were asked at the last meeting to come up with some mechanics on how to transition the committees. So that's included in your resolution 12A. I will suggest that in addition to the resolution and the detail there is that a couple of members of the governance committee could work with each of the committee chairs in 2021, because we'll have some people with 1-year term, 2-year term, and how we ultimately work through 2021 so that by 2022, we have a third of the committees rotating on 3-year terms. So we'll be kind of like on-site consultants with each committee chair to sort through the roster and make sure we start to build the runway to get to this final rotation. But I would move that we approve the mechanics as described in 12A. And then I also have a report on 2021's agenda.
It's actually 11B. It's resolution 11B. And you have it in your packet.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll read it. Approval Mechanics Committee member terms. Resolved, Community Service Associates Inc. Board of Directors approves on recommendation of the Governance Committee Mechanics to establish committee member terms. 1, each CSA committee may have a maximum of 9 residential property owners who are not CSA board members. 2, starting for committee membership for 2021, 1/3 of the committee members are to be appointed to a 3-year term, 1/3 to a 2-year term, and 1/3 to a 1-year term. The decision is up to the committee chair for 2021, probably in collaboration with current committee members. As the initial 1-year or 2-year terms expire, those committee members may be appointed to a 3-year term at the discretion of the then committee chair. Committee members cannot serve more than 2 consecutive full 3-year terms for a total of 6 consecutive years prior to cycling off the committee for at least 1 year. Is there a motion for this to approve?
So moved.
I'm sorry, I missed part of it. Partial terms count toward the 6-year limit. So those serving the initial 1-year and 2-year terms may serve up to the maximum 6-year term if they are reappointed after their partial term expires. Second 3-year terms are not guaranteed and are up to the committee chair at the time. If a committee member resigns during their term, the committee chair may appoint a replacement to serve the remainder of that member's then current term. Now I've read the entire, is there a motion? So Mr. Caskey's moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Spear. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of changing the bylaws as such, raise your hand. Any opposition? Seeing none, this is approved. I think it's a great idea, Jim. Thank you to the governance committee for standardizing and providing for a rotating number of new ideas on the committees.
And would you want to hear 2021 now?
Please.
Okay, staying on the theme of committees, the governance committee is working to develop an approach to have standard charters that can be put in place and not have to be updated annually, can be looked at, but really start to get some routine and mechanisms in place. We're also working on how to establish agendas, how to publish them, how to be more timely on our minutes, recognizing our board schedule. Oftentimes it's tough to post minutes because they're not yet approved, and how to coordinate the agendas of committees with those of CSA management. So that's a continued work of the committee around, the governance committee around improving the functions of our committees. The second category that we're going to be tackling and bringing forward in early 2021 is an update to the conflict of interest policy, which will include not only potential financial conflicts, but also overlapping business or community interests, like you serve on a board that may somehow overlap with CSA's activity. So we're refining our language with legal counsel around that. And we're also going to be suggesting a disclosure form that is signed so that we all attest to what may be involved in a potential conflict. It's important to note that conflicts are okay, that just because you have a conflict doesn't mean you're not qualified to serve on the board, or you should serve or should not serve on the board, but they really are just things that need to be managed deliberately by a board through its decision processes. So we're going to bring that packet forward early 2021. We're refining our final grid and the characteristics to help committee chairs and the board nominating committee identify the kind of characteristics and backgrounds and skills that are needed to really have an enriched group of people sitting around the governance table, a diverse group around the governance table, as well as within our committees. So that those guidelines, they are guidelines only, of how to begin to assess characteristic skills, desired qualities will be coming forward. And the last item that we hope to tackle in 2021 is to introduce and look for board approval that on a regular basis, semi-annually, annually, whatever we might determine, that we would have routine referendum that would come forward to the community that addresses policies and practices that are pretty out of date, that just need to be updated. They aren't at the significant level of the referendum we're going to be advancing now, but they're just of corrections or clarifications or updating of our business practices and our guidelines and our policies. So we think if there's a semi-annual or annual referendum that just goes through these kind of issues, many times on a multiple choice, vote yes, vote no, it can really start to move a lot of our documents up to current business practices and good governance practices. So we look forward to introducing that practice in our business of running the board on a regular basis in 2021. So questions? Those are our 4 topics for 2021.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions from the board for Jim? Seeing none, I will note Jim's last point on changing, updating the covenants and on a somewhat regular basis. There has been some conversation in the community about why we aren't doing electronic balloting for our referendum. As a good example, obviously back in 1974 when the covenants were drafted, they didn't have electronic balloting. They probably didn't have electronics at the time. I don't know. I was just a 1-year-old, but they clearly. There is many ways that we could improve our processes that the covenants don't allow. And that would be one place where we could do it. We can't use it this time because we're limited to mailing ballots, but over time, those kind of covenant changes, perhaps we'll get the community involved in updating our covenant. So I think it's a great idea the governance committee is doing that.
Yeah, and we're going to create a roster of what, and maybe put it into priority so that the board can then start to take those kind of things under advisement, go out for referendum and get changes made.
Great, thank you, Jim. Next is the government liaison. Stu? You're on mute still, Stu.
Okay, now I'm on.
You're on, we hear you.
Good morning, good morning. Got a quick update. Our county administrator resigned a couple of weeks ago. Eric Greenway, who Sam has known each other for a number of years in past life, is the interim and will serve for at least 8 months in that capacity. I will end up becoming the finance chair again, which I've done for many years. With the county being highly dependent on property tax revenues and the growth in sales across the county, I think the revenue stream will be strong. I don't anticipate any tax increases in the near future. And I would comment that with the rise in property values that we've all seen, that the $600 for the referendum gets lost in the rounding. The Senate did not take up the reoccurring dollars last year because of the virus. They'll take that up in January as soon as they come back. We're putting together a proposed list for them now. One item that I suspect will be at the top of the list will be the terminal for the Hilton Head Airport, where the FAA has put up 20 odd million, and we need to come up with another 15 either through the state or through the local. I think that'll happen. On the 278, that corridor group, the new bridges, if you will, in that corridor, the preferred alternative is expected in the early next year. There's certainly been a lot of pushback on the island about the designs that they've seen so far, mostly because it's all being done at grade, which just ends up with massive amounts of concrete and additional signals. A couple of us have put forward a proposal to actually do a grade separation, the ideal location being where Parker's is, where Spanish Wells connects to Wild Horse. DOT's evaluating that. Seems to make some sense. I anticipate that we may do a sales tax penny referendum in 22. You may remember we did one in 18, which was 80 million for the bridges. It's always easier to kind of continue those things than to stop and start. So I think we probably look at either a half penny for 4 years or a full penny for 2 years. The significance for us is that they need to balance across the county in order to get the votes. And the best opportunity for us is the Sea Pines Circle. Essentially, it's failing, as we all know. The tolls are coming off the toll road probably next year, which will add a little bit more traffic. And it's the most accident-prone section of roads on the island. I'm not optimistic that, with all due respect to the feds, the state, the county, and the town, that they'll come up with a solution. So it behooves us to actually figure out what the solution is to the circle, because the fallback position would be just a massive intersection. Take the circle out, which I don't think any of us want. A couple other minor items. On the stormwater, the county is going to be moving to a regional authority by watershed. In other words, Hilton Head would be a watershed. And in the case of solid waste, they're moving to what's called an enterprise zone, which is like a business within government, where you can look at it as a cost and profit center. I think both of those two will minimize the subsidy that we have to the balance of the county. So it's probably a slight cost reduction for all of us. And lastly, there's the county, and I think it was kind of nutty, is trying to impose a fee on all the residents on Hilton Head to pay for the sheriff's cost. The net effect for us is that it actually reduces our costs in sea pines and shifts them to those that can least afford it, because it's on a per property basis. I think that thing will die a death the first time they need a referendum passed, because you can't pass a referendum in the county without Hilton Head being part of it. So that's kind of a quick update. We are happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Stu on that issue? I know we're all reading the news about the county, so I appreciate the updates, Stu. Next is land use management, Mr. Spear. Rich, you got to get off mute, please.
On mute. Okay.
There you go. And thank you for coming back from the space shuttle. That's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I just took that first launch.
Yeah.
And sometimes my best work is done mute. The Land Use Management Committee, as I think everybody knows, was formed 2 years ago. It's a joint effort between the ARB, CSA, and ASPO. The committee has worked extremely hard for the past 2 years internally, going over covenants, policies and issues from various committees, outside legal counsel, etc., and has drafted, as the board knows, a comprehensive update to an inclusion of the rules and regulations for land use management. Because of all the other priorities associated with what we're dealing with today, such as we've heard up until this point, the decision's been made to come back to this early next year, when the board has had an opportunity, CSA board in particular, has had an opportunity to review the rules and regulations and details. Having just joined the committee this past year, I'd have to say this has probably been the most comprehensive review I've seen in the 5 years that I've been involved with CSA and ASPO. In terms of the land use management report for 2020 through November, really through October, we have about 472 violations of our policies and covenants. About 115 of those are active. About 11 are serious enough that the LUM committee is looking at them, but 357 were resolved. They get resolved with Ryan's involvement and other people's help. We actually have started sending out, or have sent out for some time, thank you notices to property owners that have taken particularly good care of their property. As of right now, most of the violations that we have are landscaping related, mowing, weeding, trimming, ground covers, about 188 of those. Of maintenance, where we have damaged driveways, wood rot, that sort of thing, around 68. There are about 100 ARB violations. That is where people have undertaken everything from pools to other sorts of things without a proper permit or approval from ARB. And Ryan's job is, in part, is to actually follow up on those. We've had a number of mailbox issues, but that's pretty much an ongoing issue for repair and replacement and damage. And then we have a miscellaneous. We have the political flags that went out at various points in time. We have people with trash cans on the streets and various miscellaneous things such as that. But really the key item in terms of this year's work has been the focus on the development of the plan for revising the rules and regulations, that being reviewed in detail by outside counsel and being shared with the CSA board. But again, it's an extensive document that requires time for everybody to read through. And it brings forward the rules we have already in committees, as well as the covenant rules, regulations relative to the maintenance of our properties. To the extent we spend the money that we've talked about in the referendum, but individual property owners don't maintain their properties, then we affect the properties around us. We do have one legal action going on relative to a property. We have several others that may hit that point, but hopefully that won't be necessary. In terms of this coming year, the focus is really on getting approval early this year of the rules and regulations, and then secondly, implementing it. The ultimate source, so we're all clear, is not a LUM committee, but it is SAM, because SAM doesn't have enough to do. If there are particular objections that are unable to be resolved by the land use management person, Ryan, who reports to SAM, then SAM will resolve that and, to the extent necessary, escalate it as he deems appropriate. There also is a number of issues that have been suggested as fine tuning that might go on next year. But right now the focus for early 21 is on the approval of and the implementation of these land use management policies and rules. A key part of that is there is a fine structure that's put in place that is also present in other communities. Different than others, we have warning letters and comments and visits that occur ahead of any fines. This is not intended to be a profit center. This is just intended to ensure the quality of all of our properties. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rich. I do want to note, appreciate all the work that went in by the LUMC committee, Land Use Management Committee, into these new rules and proposals, in addition to the other work they do. And I also appreciate their patience in understanding the priority that we needed to give this year to the funding, and with the expectation that next year's board will take up those rules in detail certainly early in the first quarter, if not sooner. So thank you for that. Any other questions for Rich? Hearing none, we'll move on then to Bill Johnson, Safety and Security.
Mr. Chairman, Safety Security met on October the 28th, and a lot of the items that were discussed at our meeting have already been covered by reports from other committee members due to the crossover in topics. A couple comments I would have, however, is we're waiting for a date to be finalized for a demonstration from a new software company. CSA 360 is the vendor that we're looking to take our software issues on and implement their product into Sea Pines. A couple other issues as it relates to our leisure trail task force. We identified that there are many electric vehicles, which we talked about, that are on our bicycle paths and roads. We identified one bicycle company that was violating our rules, and they were renting and delivering electric bicycles into the community. And so we were reaching out to our legal team for advice on how to approach this situation. Toby gave us an update on the beach drop-off for Sea Pines visitors that's being considered. There had been a rumor that these were trolley pull-off destinations. They're not. They're designed for drop-off in a car, and they're not a trolley stop like the Heritage trolley pad. This to get approval would be presented to several committees before it comes to the board of directors. We talked about the motor coach short-term parking, which again went through the gate entry committee. One new topic that came up, we had a presentation by the Sea Pines Resort regarding the popularity of these extremely large, I call them tents that Ringling Brothers would be proud to utilize. Our beachgoers are bringing these onto our beaches, and they're blocking visibilities and access to the water's edge. for lifeguards and safety personnel. The resort is looking to go to the town, petitioning them for a ban on these large tents around the beach club. My suggestion was that we look at banning those on the entire beaches of Sea Pines. Mr. McMacken asked for us to support their efforts in banning these to the town. We voted to support that in bringing the proposal to the CSA board as a whole. So with that, we've decided, I believe at this meeting, to table it until the beginning of 2021 for more discussion. In addition, we had a request from a resident to permit property owners to travel to their homes and outside the gate on motorcycles. The committee was not in support of this, so no action was taken on that. As it relates to 2021, I'd like to say that first, we're extremely fortunate to have Toby McSwain at the helm of safety and security. He has done, I think, a yeoman's job in this position, especially with some headwinds that he's battled as it relates to finances, to properly staff the security force as we'd like to have it. Our goal for next year, primary goal, is to get an audit on our safety security and provide the monies to implement their findings. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions of Bill Johnson for under safety and security? Steve? Steve Burbo?
Bill, Steve, could you just comment further on the beach tents? And you said that it was decided to table it until 2021. We've been talking with the town and really only just talking about creating a small zone there right in front of the beach club where the tents have gotten so, the number of tents has gotten so increased. And that was really all we were really considering.
Yes, Steve, the motion.
Bill, maybe I can handle this, as it came up with the executive committee and it was the executive committee's decision.
Okay, go ahead.
Steve, the executive committee discussed this at some length with Bill, and the discussion was that we thought it was a good idea to make this the information about what the town was considering and what the resort was looking at available to citizens, but that it wasn't necessary in CSA's interest, without understanding where our citizens were, to try and take a position, because there may be as many citizens who would like to bring property owners who would like to be able to bring their tents down to their areas, who might be concerned about limiting it to the areas directly in front of the beach club. And so what we thought was that Bill discussed it, and as you just have, open the question up. I think the town's going to take it up and see whether or not we get support or opposition, but not to necessarily, this was not an issue that we had enough information about what our property owners would be considering for the executive committee to put it on the agenda today.
Okay, I mean, we're going to probably continue our work with the town, because I think the town council is inclined to move forward with the proposal. We really were just only asking CSA to help with the enforcement. We expect the tent, the town's vendor, Shore Beach Services, to really enforce it, but there may need to be, for the person that doesn't want to, that tries to put it up within the small area, that they would need to have some law enforcement down there to possibly to just enforce the ordinance.
And Steve, let me be very clear. There was a motion made to to support your efforts to ban personal pop-up tents on the beach within 200 yards of the beach club, and to be presented to the board of directors for consideration. And the motion was seconded, and we had a couple committee members that voted against it, but we had a majority of the committee voting in favor of this motion. So just to be clear that the motion did pass to bring it to the CSA board as a whole.
Right, and the executive committee, after further consideration, decided not to. But Steve, I want to note, I'm sure that if the town adopts an ordinance, we will do what we can within the limitations of our security force to enforce any town ordinance that exists. We just didn't believe we had enough information as a board, even from the limited discussion that came up at Safety and Security, the executive committee, to be able to take a position without putting it out for public for further discussion. Hopefully, this discussion today gives the beginning of what we'll find, whether or not our citizens, our property owners, are interested in that kind of or find it offensive. So that was the purpose of the concern by the executive committee, which is why it's not on the agenda. So I'd like to move on. But Steve, I'm sorry, do you have any other comments or concerns?
No, it's fine. Just so that, people listening understand, we were only just trying to create a small zone right in front of the beach club, not at the extent of the 5 miles of beach within Sea Pines, just a 200-yard area that are right in front of the beach club, where there's so many tents that go up and hard to get through to the water's edge, and for the safety, security, and the enjoyment of everybody that's trying to utilize the beach there.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions or concerns on safety and security? If not, we'll move on to short-term rental. David Pardue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's really not much new in short-term rentals, and so much of my presentation, really, as Bill had said, has already been covered with the gate entry policy and with safety and security. There's just so much crossover. We obviously discuss better access to the beach by short-term rentals. Nobody's got a particularly good solution there, neither do I, but that's continued discussion. We're involved with the trolley operations and all of that. The only new subject, it's an old subject actually, but it's recently come to our attention, is there's several homes that are being actively advertised for, let's say, suitable for events, and they're primarily the large oceanfront homes. There's one in particular that's had 3 large weddings this fall already. The advertisement on the website is that it sleeps 27 and is suitable for weddings and large events. And some of the weddings have been like 60 guests with 50 cars parked on a T Street. So with Ryan Cash's help, we've done a little bit of legal review, and the legal position is that crosses the line into a commercial establishment, and the owners and the rental agents have been notified and have agreed, at least on the one particular house, to voluntarily stop it. But we've got to figure out a way to enforce that. I don't think anybody objects to smaller parties, but when you have one house that's got a 50-person wedding 3 or 4 weekends in the fall and spring, then that, at least in my opinion, crosses the line into being too much of an imposition to the neighborhood. For 2021 is really just a continuation of what we've been trying to do, and also continue to try to improve our communications between the board, meaning our committee, and the renters, the rental agents, and the people who own the rental facilities. And that's going to be particularly true whenever the land use management proposals are finally adopted, because even though land use management proposals have mainly to do with landscaping and people keeping other homes, there are a lot of things that cross into affecting rental properties and short-term and people who rent the properties. So it's really 2021 is just a continuing education with the rental agents and with the property owners. So that's all I've got to say, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Pardue? Scott?
Yeah, David, I think I sent that to you, but we had that problem on Calamogie K probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And we attacked it pretty aggressively and were successful in getting them basically by letting, the renting agents and so forth know that, they were going to pay a price for pushing that. So there is some precedent there is all I'm saying to stop that, the wedding stuff. And I think you can do it. You can use safety because, as you said, cars and so forth. And as we've always talked about, you have to be able to get emergency vehicles down any street. And that's the fastest way to stop that. Say there's X amount of cars on a T street, a fire engine can't get in there. Therefore, you got to get rid of all, you got to move the car. So anyway, there's some ways to fight that fire.
Right. And also, as far as communications, coincidentally, tomorrow afternoon, I forgot to mention this, but tomorrow afternoon, there's a Zoom meeting where all of the homeowners who rent their homes and all the rental agents are invited. It's a meeting that Toby and the staff tries to do once a year. It got sidetracked in March because of obvious reasons, but it's going to happen tomorrow afternoon. And so it's one of the things on the topics to to bring up. I think that some of the rental agents just get a little bit overly ambitious and think, well, we can get because if you can rent a house that sleeps 25 for a wedding that's going to have 50, you can charge $20,000 a week, or even for a long weekend. So it's awfully tempting for some people to do it, but we're going to have to put a stop to it, in my opinion. But the staff did want to wait until they got a legal review of it, and so we can hang our hat on the fact that we do believe it's a covenant violation.
Any other questions, Jim?
Yeah, Larry, do you think the board in 2021 should put on its agenda a in-depth discussion and analysis of the whole issue of short-term rental? It's critical. It's a key part of our community, the community fabric. It's probably how most all of us ended up to be homeowners because we were once tourists and short-term renters. And, we have this great resort. We've got all these properties that are rented. We have full-time residents. But there does seem to be a pattern, maybe a joint thing, David, your committee with Bill, yours on safety, to really start to understand the numbers, the impact, what's going on, and maybe just start to have more of a general discussion around a strategy around short-term rental, where it is, where it's going.
It's a great idea, Jim. I do think at our first workshop in January, that's a good idea. That's something we should start thinking about as a project for the year, because I know our full-time residents, even those who recognize the benefits of our tourist guests, are concerned by the number of properties that are being rented. But the other side of that is the economy and the ease with which individuals can rent these days through VRBO and all the other mechanisms indicates that it's not likely to shrink. So we will be working on that issue in terms of making sure that our rental properties maintain the quality of sea pines, and that we're doing something to make sure that our residential property owners also benefit from the tourism that's created. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, I just worry that, like, for example, on security, I chaired that before, Bill, and we always worried about our infrastructure isn't set up for the number of tourists that can come through. So there's a demand on our security staff, there's more expense, more wear and tear. So I just think we need a strategic discussion about it.
Good idea. Thank you. Any other comments for David Pardue? If not, we'll turn to our cleanup and final comment committee and final event for the day of Mr. Rodman.
Yeah, strategic planning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This builds on the strategic plan that was put together 3 years ago under the able leadership of Michael Tucker. And this is probably a 2-year process to update that. Some of the items from that plan are in the process of being executed by Sam. We ended up doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis this year. One that was interesting that popped out was people thought that perhaps our technology offering is not as competitive as we might think it is, and that's particularly important for people that may be thinking about coming here. We may convene a committee of our grandkids to figure out what we really ought to do, because most of us don't understand it. A couple of interesting trends that we're obviously sensitive to. We've all been talking about the short-term rental piece, and clearly I think your idea of a workshop at the beginning of the year makes a lot of sense. And the flip side of that is that our number of full-time residents is decreasing. We're probably on a glide path to drop from about 1/3 to 1/4 of sea pines as more or less the full-time residents. The other interesting trend is the inward migration of new people, particularly as people are escaping other parts of the country, and I think we'll be a beneficiary of that. So we want to be sensitive to what it is that we ought to do to make that welcoming and make the most that we can of it. There's 2 task forces that we're standing up. One is kind of a marketing and branding one, certainly not looking at doing anything nationally, but it's good to take a look at what we need to do to make sure that we're competitive and whether we have any shortcomings, and Michael Tucker is leading that. The other is in the area of amenities. We're perhaps in some areas not as competitive as some of the other gated communities, and so we're going to stand that up. I've reached out to ASPO to see if it's something that they might have an interest in playing a lead role, or certainly an important role, because they represent so many of the property owners. So that's pretty much where we are in the halfway point of a 2-year assignment.
Thank you, Stu. That is the end of our formal agenda. Is there any other business that any directors want to bring to the attention of the board? Seeing none, Steve?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment, Larry, if I could.
Sure.
I report on this, occasionally, and we are, as you know, fortunate to receive a lot of awards. And this month's edition of Golf Magazine includes their biennial list of top 100 courses in the U.S. And the competition is continuing to increase. We've got a number of new private courses that have made the list, but I'm pleased to report that Harbortown Golf Links is once again on the top 100 list by Golf Magazine, and the publisher had some very, very nice comments about the course and the experience.
Thank you, Steve. That's good. That's great news. And as someone who regularly gets beaten down by one of the greatest courses on the East Coast, I appreciate them ranking it as high as it is, because it just means it's not me. It's got to be the golf course. Before I adjourn, I do want to thank you all. As I noted at the beginning, first year as chairman is something that's unexpected challenges. But I asked the board this year to spend a lot of time in workshops and special meetings and assignments through your committees. I never got anything but a positive response, and on behalf, I do want to thank you all for all the work you put in this year. There'll be potentially 3 new members, certainly some new members next year, and a new slate of officers. And I didn't want to leave the last meeting without thanking you all for that. With that, I've taken a motion to adjourn. Questions? Any, David Pardue to move to adjourn. All in favor of adjourning? Great. The meeting's adjourned. Normally we would have a 5-minute recess, but given the time and the amount of time we've already spent, I'm going to go straight into questions. So if any board members need to take a short break, we'll understand if you go off video, but I'm going to go straight into questions. So those of you who are watching don't need to wait 5 minutes for the questions. So our first question, and these have been posted either before the meeting or during the meeting. First question is from Glenn Jordan. How is the expected contribution of the resort at 0.25% of adjusted gross resort revenue compared to what they were going to contribute in the previous referendum? It is the exact same amount, but instead of being part of the general assessment, it will be separately accounted for in the new improvement fund. Based on the current proposal, what overall percentage of the new incremental contribution with the coming referendum will be contributed by the 3 parties, owners, commercial, and resort? And how does this compare with the previous referendum? Well, I guess the easiest way to try and explain that, the previous referendum had the property owners at maximum of 450 by this point, the commercial and the resort are the exact same as they would have been had it passed. So because we are further into the process, we know a lot more about the costs. And this year the board decided to seek what we need, not with what the minimum we thought we could possibly pass. There will be an increase of some small percentage in the total amount that's raised from the $600 by the RPOs. And there's lots of ways of spinning that. I think the easiest spin that I'd ask you to recognize is a $600 investment, $50 a month, a fair amount to ask of each property owner to support your roads and your infrastructure and your leisure trails and bridges. And I hope you will vote yes to save the community. I think we can thank the resort, which does not have to contribute for contributing. I think we can thank the commercial representatives for contributing. They don't have to contribute. I hope they will thank us if this passes for our contributions. But at the end of the day, each of us has to look and decide, is $50 a month worth keeping our community, rebuilding our community, the fine standard it was intended to be. So percentage-wise, would that do either the contributions move the needle dramatically to change what the RPOs need to pay? No. But we appreciate the amount that they're putting in. And we also need to recognize that as Sea Pines gets back to its premier status, one would hope that the resort and the commercial will be far more successful as they continue to improve their own facilities. And the more successful they are, the more their percentages go up. And so all we can hope is that the resort ends up tripling its adjusted resort revenue next year, and we get an extra 0.25% out of those extra two doubles or triples. So I hope that answered that. Question from John and Philomena Wardzel. Is the $600 going to be for a fixed number of years? If so, how many? No, as I earlier indicated, there is no sunset. We're going to leave to future boards whether they want to continue collect it if they need it to fix infrastructure. If forever, will it be inflation adjusted each year? Yes, by the CPI. If forever, will the annual assessment be adjusted to include the $600 and be split on the back end, or will it be collected and maintained as a separate collection to maintain transparency? It will be collected and maintained as a separate collection to maintain transparency and to limit the uses by future boards only for critical infrastructure. And this does also provide the necessary protection that if there is no need to improve infrastructure at some point or the need lessens, the board will not be in a position to ask for the money. Question from Doyle Hodge. Please expand upon the commitment of the commercial property owners have agreed to in accordance with the 2019 referendum. Well, as I indicated, they are going to be paying based on the square feet of the first floor tenants and second floor tenants for occupied business and commercial spaces, 36 cents per square foot for the first floor tenants and 0.27 or 27 cents per square foot for second floor tenants, adjusted upwards starting in 2023, in addition to the CPI adjustment of 4 cents for each of the first 3 years from first floor tenants and 3 cents for the second floor tenants for each of those 3 years. Number 3, questions from Doug Shoup or Shup. I apologize if I mispronounced. As early as October 9th and 26th in your email, you mentioned the board was in the process of addressing the special tax districts. What is the current status of this efforts, and will we know this millage rate prior to a public referendum vote? In terms of the status itself, we have continued to work with our attorneys to develop the petition that's necessary. Candidly, we've been extremely focused since we announced the decision to go to a referendum on the various budgeting issues that we need to do in formulating the referendum with our attorneys. And so that's been slowed down a little bit. In addition, as we've indicated, we need to talk to the assessor to determine, we continue to try to get together with the assessor, and we can talk to the auditor as well. And in both cases, we're dealing with county employees who have other jobs. If you read the packet, you know that in the case of the auditor, they have been under pressure from other sources regarding the way that they've handled our town of Hilton Head taxes. And so it's been a difficult process. In addition, as Stu Rugman mentioned, the county administrator that we were working with in trying to work through the process was replaced, and so we have that to start again. So to answer your question, I don't think we will in fact know the millage rate prior to the public referendum vote. In addition, speaking just for myself, depending on how that vote goes, if we win, we won't need to do the work. But if we lose by a very small margin, and I hope that's not the case, but there's a strong mandate for a $600 amount vote, this board may want to, next year's board may want to look at whether we want to change from an ad valorem to a flat rate. And so that may also affect how fast we move forward on the special tax district if it's needed. Second question, as I just answered, surprisingly, versus a flat referendum fee, has the board investigated the possibility of a user-based fee? Yes, the referendum task force has looked at a number of user-based fees, none of which we're going to raise nearly enough to meet our critical information infrastructure needs, all of which have questions as to how we could be implementing them and enforcing the payment of them. And so they remain on our radar screen should in the future additional monies be needed for operating expenses, because recognizing all of this money will be put into the ground. And we've discussed in many past board meetings the need to consider whether or not our security force is sufficient to cover our increasing number of short-term renters and people in the community. Anyone who's been here over the last 3 months knows that what used to be the quiet season is no longer the quiet season. And so our staff, our security staff is strained, to say the least, and we have to pay the piper to get good quality. So we may be looking at fees in the future, but that's not on our radar right now. Also, assuming a funding plan is approved, we will be doubling the yearly investment in our infrastructure. With such a large increase in an internal review of best practices should be in place to optimize the use of the funds. What plans can you share on how you will prioritize the spending, strengthen controls, purchasing guidelines, and competitive bidding, and implement robust project management to assure that we are getting the best value for our dollars? How will you scorecards that we are optimizing use and communicate your results? I can answer the first part without turning to Sam by noting that when we were looking for a new president, we wanted someone who had the level of experience in construction management and government construction projects to be able to handle what I hoped at least would be our infrastructure funding. I believe without any question we found the right person. I think you heard earlier in the meeting Sam's understanding of how we were going to prioritize, how we went around getting the bidding. And so I'm absolutely confident that we will be doing all the things you just identified under the guidance of our president. But I'll turn to Sam. How will you scorecard that we are optimizing use and communicate your results?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a great question, and I will go back to something I mentioned earlier. The key to that, outside of the work that staff will do, will be how we engage our committees. You know, CSA as an organization stands on the work of its committees, and I think that's very clear from the reports we just had. So everything that we do moving ahead with these dollars will be at the direction and with the approval of the MEMP committee as in terms of prioritization, with the finance committee in terms of where the dollars are, how the dollars are being spent, with the communications committee on how we are engaging the community on the way the dollars are spent, where the dollars are going, and then finally with the board. So I guess the best answer to that question is staff's is going to move the organization ahead, but the committees are going to play a significant role in this because the committees represent the community. You know, the committees, as you all know, have a small number of board members, but they have a large number of members of the community. And I can tell you the MEMP and the Finance Committee have been very engaged in development of this $35 million additional spend that we're asking for. So I think the short answer for me is more to come on that, but all done and developed through our committee structure and done very transparently and openly and shared with our community.
Thank you, Sam. The next question comes from Carrie DeVillette. And this actually mirrors a theme that I've seen on some of the Facebook pages. Will we be able to see online a detailed list of each project and capital expense by area, roadways, leisure paths, and stormwater that foot back to the requested dollars under the proposed referendum? When I see this question, someone suggested we need a 10-year cash flow with our $35 million, $3.5 million a year. I'm reminded of the budget that I essentially created a year ago for 2020 and 2021, that included travel plans, general and entertainment expense. And it was perfectly laid out. I knew we'd have exactly enough money to do all the travel we wanted to do for the next 2 years.
You're talking about a personal budget.
My personal budget, right. And then a couple things happened. COVID hit, and all of our travel plans were canceled through almost the end of October, end of 2021. My grandchildren could no longer stay in New York City, and they've been living with us, and so our food budgets have gone out the roof. And the point being, I could try to plan 8 years out, but I can't even plan 6 months out or 9 months out or a year out. You can do the best you can, recognizing that circumstances change. So for those who honestly believe that there would be any benefit to having a cash flow over 10 years, I ask you to ask yourself whether that's anything you would do in your personal life or even in the businesses that you may have been involved in. It doesn't make any sense. We could lay it out, and 3 years from now, a board would find out that instead of the end of South Beach, South Sea Pines Drive, something else has happened. Governor's Road has collapsed, and the need is to fix that road. What we can tell you is that we have used very good estimates of current projects, almost up to the date, because we have the bids in, and we have projected out those numbers. We've also included a CPI, which I hope will at least provide us some cushion going forward. But this board at least, is not going to try and project what a board in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, which I can assure you none of us from the RPO side will be on, is going to spend the money. This is the best projections we have. It is better than anything we've used in the past. It's substantially better than what we had in the 2019 referendum. And it still may not be enough. And that will be for future boards to figure out how to fill in the shortfall, or it may be too much. And that will be for a future board that you all in the community will get to elect, will be able to determine to stop collecting. But a 10-year cash flow would be an effort that would be meaningless beyond perhaps a year or two. And even then, you're doing the best you can, hoping that circumstances are, in our case, there's no storms, there's no unusual rainfall that will cause collapses that we didn't expect. So I appreciate the question. I hope I've given you an explanation why it's not an exercise we're going to go through. And I hope as you think through the need for it, that will not be something that you believe is a reason to vote against voting for your community's improvement. Next question. What actions are the board considering to try to minimize some of the noise issues with renters in primarily residential areas? Are restrictions being considered for outdoor televisions? Sam, I'll punt this one to you.
Well, anytime we have Mr. Chairman, to the community, anytime we have an issue with noise or a noise violation or concern, I've encouraged folks to call safety and security. And I don't know if Toby is still on the line or not, but safety and security goes out on a regular basis and deals with noise complaints and noise issues. And 99 times out of 100, folks are compliant and they're apologetic for the issue and for the noise they have raised. So just know the best thing to do if there is a noise concern about something is to call safety and security, call dispatch. And then are restrictions being considered for outdoor televisions? That is a new one to me, but if an outdoor television is causing a noise issue, it would be handled the same way as any other noise concern would be. So again, if it's causing concerns, call safety and security.
And I should note two other additions to that. The Land Use Management Committee rules that we will be considering next year will in fact continue to strengthen the covenants that require quiet enjoyment of your neighborhoods. And if there are in fact loud parties, security can be called. There is also an ongoing consideration and investigation of imposing noise limits on lawn leaf blowers and outdoor blowers. That's been under study by an ASPO committee. I think the ASPO tabled it. It's continuing to be considered in the NEMP because there is some discussion by property owners to try and limit the noise of the gas blowers and that are regularly used by our lawn care folks without imposing undue restrictions on their ability to do business in the community. So that's the only other noise issue I'm aware of. Thank you for that question. Questions from Patricia Pedraza. The beach experience has deteriorated greatly. It is known to have dog poop left behind. Never thought dog poop would come up in a board meeting. There is a very large amount of trash left behind. Dogs run loose. People with loudspeakers disturbing others. Is there any plan to restore a pleasant environment at the beach? Patricia, thank you for that question. We have limited ability as Sea Pines to control the beach because the beach is generally owned by the town of Hilton, owned and restricted by the town of Hilton Head. We have a very short area of the beach trust, and then of course the resort has its area, but generally the town of Hilton Head controls the beach. If there is a noise ordinance, or if there is a ordinance like that we do have on dogs on leashes, and it's rewarded, we are aware of dogs not on leashes during the right time, we can send security, but truthfully, by the time they would get there, unless our beach patrol happens to be there, there's not much we can do. We can encourage, as we will in the renters meeting, encourage our rental management companies to do everything they can to discipline renters when they come here, recognizing that they are coming into a community that is of a high quality and that has rules. But beyond that, and beyond enforcing the town's rules if they exist, and sending our beach patrol around and trying to do the best they can with dogs off leashes and large gatherings, there's really not much more we can do, but we're open to any suggestions that any property owner has as to what else we can do on that regard. Second question, what if anything is being done to collect the money from the town of Hilton Head that was written off in past financial exercises? A write-off does not mean giving up on attempts to collect. Can you give some details as to the efforts made to collect, if any? Sam, do you want to take that one?
Yes, sir. So the town of Hilton Head, through whenever we perform work inside Sea Pines that may be covered under the town's stormwater management plan, if it is work that is covered by the town and we perform the work, then our goal is always to get the town to reimburse us. And we have a number of reimbursables out now. We have sent those to the town and met with the town, and we're expecting to get something back from the town in the near future. I don't have any more details other than that to share you, but the town does recognize that they have reimbursables back to CSA, and our goal is to collect as much of those as possible. The challenge becomes, does the town have the resources to pay us? Because some of the times the work that's done in Sea Pines is not scheduled for the town to be done in 5 or 6 years, and the town will not reimburse us for work until that work is scheduled to be done under their schedule. So Victoria, I think I've gotten that right. Dave Borghese, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, part of it is the agreement with the town relative to stormwater, which basically says that to the extent that they have funds available to reimburse us, they will reimburse us. To the extent that they don't have funds available, they are not responsible. And therefore, we never actually reported what we've done is we've sent invoices, but understanding that we don't have an explicit right until they agree that they have funding. So we have never actually written anything off because we've never reported them in the first place, because under generally accepted accounting principles, we do not have a bona fide receivable until they agree that they have the money to fund. And that's where we stand.
Well, and
We have not forgotten about it.
No.
So to sum it up, is it that we think there is a reimbursable for work that we have performed that we believe the town should have? We are still pursuing reimbursement of that work.
Thank you. And I think that helps explain, because there has been some Facebook discussion which resulted from a story in the Island Packet about the town's failure to have money and trying to reach new agreements with the various communities on it.
Well, and if I can address that, since you've raised the issue, Mr. Chairman, the town did come to us back in August with the second proposal, and Russell and Victoria and our council went through that proposal and brought a number of changes to the town's attention, and to the town's credit, they made every change to that proposal that Sea Pines asked for. So we were very engaged in that proposal and are very comfortable moving ahead, that that the proposal will look out for the best interest of sea pines. But again, it boils down to the resources the town has available, which aren't near enough to cover the challenges we have.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks.
Yes.
And thanks for that question, Patricia. Next question comes from Christopher Cliff. Please provide feedback on Sam's and David Henderson's meeting with Terry Lewis of the town in August 2020 to discuss proposals for the gallery of shops. Sam?
Happy to do that, Mr. Chairman. So Ms. Lewis, and I may get her title wrong, I apologize to her if I do that, is the land use, she's over land zoning for the town. Our meeting with Ms. Lewis was involved trying to understand exactly what we could and could not do on the gallery of shop site. The goal certainly is to raise the gallery of shops so that the eyesore that it is gone. The board and the community will then have some decisions to make as it relates to what the next steps are for the gallery of shops, be it sale, whatever it turns out to be. The key for us with Ms. Lewis is understanding if we raise the gallery of shops, what does that mean for the developmental rights that are left on that site? And so as it relates to our meeting with Ms. Lewis, it was for me to understand what those rights are. At this point, we believe that we would lose some rights if we took the site, the gallery of shops down at this point. And so we've engaged outside counsel through Gate Entry Committee and through a task force to help us to understand how we can best protect those rights and maximize the availability to do something else on that site or maintain the value of that site in the near future when we do take it down. So it was a very productive meeting. Ms. Lewis made it clear to us where things were, and we have, I think, some paths forward for the gallery of shops. And I think in 2021, it'll be one of the issues that we, as a community and as a board, pick back up, and outside of the infrastructure spending, we are able to get that building down and get it raised and make some determinations on what the future of that site looks like for sea pines.
Thank you, Sam. The next question from Mr. Cliff is, why include wording in the Fifth Amendment which states SPR is the successor entitled to SPPC? Well, as our lawyers have put that in because if we don't know who the successor to SPPC is, we don't know whose approval we can ask for the referendum and who is going to be contributing that 0.25%. So it's a very simple matter that we need to know who the successor to SPPC is because SPPC is the named party in the 1974 covenants. I think that's a fairly simple answer, and our lawyers have put it in there to be absolutely certain that we're going to the right person for their approval. And then he asked, why not publish the draft referendum details now ahead of the issue date of December 10? The draft referendum details will be on the website by the end of the day today. Everyone can see them, that we hope they'll actually read them, become familiar with them so that the first time they see them is not when they get them in the ballot on the 10th. Obviously, this will allow folks who support the referendum to go out and urge their neighbors and friends to do so, as I hope you will find it is a very simple change to the covenants, creating this fund with 3 contributors. Next is a question from Barbara Ernie. Now that the resort and commercial are participating in the referendum, has the dollar amount for the RPOs been lowered? And if not, why not? As I explained earlier, while we're happy to have their contribution, it doesn't move the needle enough to reduce the contributions that we need from the RPOs, particularly since we have the limited CPI and we're trying to make sure we have enough funds. To the extent that future boards find that this fund is overfunded or not likely to be needed in the future, they'll have the ability to reduce any of those contributions at the time. Next is a question from Linda Antonelli. What is the impact of and how will the proposed Town of Hilton Head's $150 infrastructure fee be used for sea pines? And why isn't this being taken into consideration to reduce the referendum fee? Sam, I think you just explained that, but did you want to take one more shot at it?
I'm not exactly sure if it's a new, she's referring to a proposed fee or the existing
town stormwater fee.
If it's the existing stormwater fee, I think we've covered that pretty well, that it really is just for point source repairs, and it does not cover any of the reconstruction costs and the drainage costs that we discussed as part of the $51 million.
Yeah, and I would also add that, you know, I've looked into this in great detail with town financial information. The stormwater fee that's collected by the town, at least 50% of it goes to pay for bonds for construction that was done, particularly near Hilton Head Plantation and Jarvis Park. That was done, and payment of those bonds will continue from the collection of these fees for at least the next 4, 5, 6 years until those bonds are paid off. So, you know, when you talk about how much is available to all of the gated communities, it's not even the amount that's collected, because a lot of it's already spoken for in repayment of debt that was used for construction that was done over 10 years ago. So the answer is, you know, we're still paying for something that was for the entire community, being the entire community of the town of Hilton Head. And the amount of money that's left over to help us and every other community, gated community, it just isn't sufficient. And town council knows it. They know it's not sufficient.
And to the extent, I'm sorry, Linda Antonelli, if the extent is the proposed town of Hilton Head $150 infrastructure fees, Sam, do you have enough?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any proposed.
Any other fee.
I wonder, I know the county was talking about putting a fee, but I'm sorry, if Ms. Antonelli, if we have gotten your question wrong, please feel free to send it back to comments@csacpines.com or chairman@csacpines.com. And we'll try, if you can give us a little better reference for the reference to the 150 infrastructure fee, we'll try and do our best to answer that. Her other question is, what is the unit cost of road repairs in Sea Pines, and how does it compare to similar projects?
I can deal with that this way.
Okay, I'm going to let our treasurer talk to you on that.
When you talk about, you know, the cost of road repairs, there are really three, what I'll call scope of issue. One is fixing potholes and repaving little sections of the town. We've seen a lot of that being done this past fall, because as you drive along, you're going to see a very black patch where there was tree root intrusion that needed to be dug out and repaved over. That is, while it turns out to be a lot of money, I think there's about $150,000 in the annual budget to do just pothole repairs. Second scope of work is a mill and resurface. This is where you scrape off the top layer and then put on a new piece of patch of asphalt on top of the roadbed. That is contained in our reserve study that's done by a professional outside consulting firm who basically says, okay, I'm going to look at the gross square yard of a particular road, figure out the volume we have to deal with, and then they estimate a cost based upon, well, current cost levels. And for major roads, which are wider than the smaller roads, they come up with an average of like $20 to $22 per gross square yard, and that's how they figure it out. Is that absolutely accurate? Yes and no, because every road's a little different. And so you try and come up with an estimate somewhere in a midpoint and say, we know there are going to be some pluses, we know there are going to be some minuses. The last is a total rebid, and this is what we're talking about when we deal with North Sea Pines Drive and the 1.1 mile that we're going to start working on. That number is based upon a bid, and I can tell you it's about $200 per gross square yard. And that's the number that we are using to estimate the rest of North Sea Pines Drive and Sea Pines Drive all the way down to Land's End. So when you look at the three particular phases of Sea Pines Drive, and they're all about $3 to $4 million each for each of the three phases, it's all based upon the current bid that we currently have for doing phase one. Will that number actually be the same as we go forward? I can't tell you, because I don't know what the cost increases are going to be. I don't know what we're going to find from an engineering or a surveying standpoint, but that's how we came up with the estimate. We used the best numbers we could that were available to us. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, David. Amanda, that's the last question I have. Did you have any additional questions come in after, as the board meeting was going on?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all for your attention. If folks who are still watching or watched later and have any additional questions, comments at csacpines.com or chairman@csacpines.com is the best way to get to us. Board members, thank you again, and go out and tell your neighbors to vote for the referendum. Thank you all.
Vote early and vote often.
Thank you, Sam and Larry.
Thank you.